Chapter 217. Early the next morning, Ji Tianqing left the Sky Pillar sect and rushed to Dragon Mountain. He ran madly through the lofty mountains and steep ridges, and it took him a full 4 hours to reach Dragon Mountain. There were squads of guards patrolling at the foot of Dragon Mountain. Each squad had 10 people, and they were all mystic comprehending experts. He followed the bluestone path halfway up the mountain and arrived at the entrance of the cave where the ore vein was mined. Not only were there more than 20 guards at the entrance, but there were also 2 deacons standing guard. The place was heavily guarded. Ji Tianqing was about to enter the cave when he was stopped by the guards for questioning. He could only show the Sky Pillar token and explain to the guarding deacons before he was allowed to enter. Inside the cave, there were many new stone lamps in the crisscrossing mine tunnels, making the originally pitch-black tunnels a little brighter. Ji Tianqing followed the mine tunnel and walked deep underground. Along the way, he discovered that there was a guard standing guard at every set distance. The odd-job disciples who had been mining in the tunnels had already evacuated. It seems that the sect values that ancient tomb very much. The value of that ancient tomb far surpasses Dragon Mountain. Ji Tianqing sighed inwardly when he saw this scene. An hour later, he reached the deepest part of the tunnel and came to the edge of the pitch-black cliff. There were 2 deacons and a dozen guards standing guard at the edge of the cliff. Ji Tianqing was still thinking about how to reach the bottom of the cliff. The cliff was 1,000 meters high, and the cliff was steep and straight. There was no place for him to borrow strength. However, after talking with the 2 deacons standing guard at the edge of the cliff, he found out that the sect had already prepared for this. 2 rope ladders were set up at the edge of the cliff. They were 1,000 meters long and extended all the way to the bottom of the cliff. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing descended to the bottom of the cliff along the rope ladders. He hurriedly passed through the pitch-black ancient tunnel, crossed the dilapidated square, and finally arrived in front of the ancient tomb. He stood at the edge of the dilapidated square and looked at the Tianyuan array and the ancient tomb in front of him. He saw many figures moving around the array. Around the 1,000-meter Tianyuan Grand Formation, a dozen experts could be vaguely seen. Among them, there were 5 elders in purple robes and 7 or 8 deacons in black robes. Everyone was pacing back and forth to observe, or using their true essence to probe the reaction of the grand array. The huge 5-colored light shield was as dazzling as ever, exuding a majestic true essence fluctuation. Ji Tianqing observed the elders and deacons and said to the Sword Soul Burial of Heaven in his mind, "Senior Burial of Heaven, I'm already near the Tianyuan Grand Formation. Please observe carefully." The Burial of Heaven did not speak, but Ji Tianqing could sense that it was silently observing the Heaven Origin Array. At this moment, a purple-robed elder noticed Ji Tianqing and quickly rushed over. Ji Tianqing turned his head and saw that the elder was Chu Huaishan. Chu Huaishan came in front of him and asked calmly, "Ji Tianqing, why are you here?" Ji Tianqing saluted and explained, "Elder Chu, I've been thinking about this matter, so I came to check on the situation today." Chu Huaishan nodded and did not say much. If it were an ordinary disciple, it would be impossible for them to come near the ancient tomb. Even if they did, they would be chased away by him. But Ji Tianqing was different. Not only was he the #1 genius of the outer sect, but he was also highly regarded and nurtured by the sect master. Chu Huaishan said in a low voice, "Ji Tianqing, the elders are studying the array. Just stay here and watch. Don't go near the array to avoid disturbing them." Ji Tianqing quickly nodded and said, "I understand." After a pause, he asked, "Elder Chu, how is the situation? The elders have been studying it for so many days. Have they made any progress?" Chu Huaishan shook his head, his expression serious. "The elders are all array masters. It's a pity that they have been studying it for so long and have tried many methods, but they have not made any progress. They can't break this array at all." Seeing Chu Huaishan's worry, Ji Tianqing comforted him, "Elder Chu, I believe that the elders can break this array. It's just a matter of time." Chu Huaishan shook his head again and sighed helplessly. Sigh, it's useless. This Tianyuan array is too exquisite. It's far more complicated and mysterious than an ordinary Tianyuan array. We tried to break the array with arrays. The elders worked together to set up a star-breaking array. They wanted to use the star-breaking array to break the Tianyuan array. In the end, after we activated the array and touched the Tianyuan array, the star-breaking array was devoured by the Tianyuan array's power and collapsed instantly. After a pause, he continued, we tried to break the array by force. We planned to break one of the nodes of the array first, then break the entire array. However, when the elders and I attacked the Tianyuan array with all our might, it was like a clay ox entering the sea. Not only was there no reaction at all, but we were almost sucked away by the array. Last night, the second elder used the Xianji treasure pagoda. We worked together to activate the Xianji treasure pagoda, hoping to use it to break the array. Unfortunately, not only did we fail, but the Xianji treasure pagoda was also devoured by the array's power and was severely damaged. Ji Tianqing listened to Chu Huaishan, his heart full of shock. Seeing Chu Huaishan's anxious and worried look, he couldn't help but ask, Elder Chu, although this Tianyuan array is very powerful, you and the elders are all proficient in array Dao. You've all seen and touched the Tianyuan array. Why is it so difficult? Chu Huaishan stared at him and hesitated for a moment before he decided to reveal some secrets. Ji Tianqing, even heavenly origin grade grand arrays are divided into different grades, Ji Tianqing said. The Tianyuan grand formations that I and the other elders have come into contact with are all ordinary low-grade and mid-grade grand formations. But the Tianyuan array in this tomb must be of the highest grade. This array occupies the core of the Dragon Mountain spirit vein, forming a layout derived from the 5 elements. Therefore, the array's power will never be exhausted. In addition to the layout of the 5 elements, this array also contains the 6 directions stabilizing array, the Big Dipper 7 stars array, and even the 8-pole dragon lock. Just the layout of the 5 elements alone can form an ordinary Tianyuan array. This array also combines the 6 directions stabilizing array, the Big Dipper 7 stars array, and the 8-pole dragon lock. This is incredible. In addition to the layout of the 5 elements, these 3 arrays are all profound knowledge of Tianyuan array. Any one of these arrays can be used to form an upper-grade Tianyuan array, which can be used as a protective array to protect the sect. If we hadn't seen it with our own eyes, we wouldn't have believed that there is such a powerful array master in the world who can combine the mysteries of multiple arrays into one. After hearing Chu Huaishan's explanation, Ji Tianqing finally understood how profound the Tianyuan array was. Chapter 218. Ji Tianqing was weak and had never come into contact with a heavenly prime array. However, he had heard of Xiang Wuji's experiences and legends regarding array Dao. The common heavenly prime array was mostly based on the 5 elements derivation layout, with some minor changes. If an array Dao Grandmaster could master the 6 direction stabilization array or the Big Dipper 7 stars array, he could set up a more powerful heavenly prime array. As for the 8-level dragon lock, it was even more mysterious. Even Xiang Wuji had not fully mastered it. Xiang Wuji had once said that no one in the entire star ancient realm had fully mastered the 8-level dragon lock. However, the heavenly prime array in front of Ji Tianqing was a combination of the 5 elements derivation layout, the Big Dipper 7 stars array, and the 8-level dragon lock. This was an unprecedented and shocking discovery in the martial arts world. Even Xiang Wuji would not be able to break this heavenly prime array. Chu Huaishan, the elders, and the deacons were only at the origin core realm. Of course, they were helpless against this array. After understanding the ins and outs of this heavenly prime array, Ji Tianqing thought to himself, no wonder the Tianjian sect could not enter the ancient tomb even though they had discovered it long ago. Even the Sky Pillar sect could not do anything about the ancient tomb's protective array. The Tianjian sect, which was weaker, could only watch helplessly. He frowned and thought for a moment before asking Chu Huaishan a few more questions. After answering his questions, Chu Huaishan turned and left the square to help the elders study the array. Ji Tianqing had nothing to do, so he strolled around the heavenly prime array. He observed it with interest and silently waited for the sword soul's response from the burial of heaven. The elders and deacons were busy studying the array. No one paid attention to him, but no one chased him away. Before he knew it, a day had passed. Ji Tianqing walked around the heavenly prime array many times and observed it many times. However, his foundation in array Dao was shallow, so he could not find any problems or clues. Fortunately, the sword soul, burial of heaven, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke. Its voice rang out in Ji Tianqing's mind. It said in a low voice, "Kid, the heavenly prime array's setup techniques were indeed taught by Kenshin." Ji Tianqing was taking a stroll in the square out of boredom when he suddenly heard sword soul Zhangtian, and a wisp of joy instantly flashed through his eyes. He hurriedly used divine telekinesis to ask in his mind, "Senior buried heaven, do you mean that this grand Tianyuan formation was set up by the young man who received guidance from the sword god?" "That's right, even the words on the stone tablet in the tomb have some of the charm of the sword god." The Dipper's sword's voice was in a low, into the heavenly prime array. From the looks of it, Kenshin's teachings have benefited the youth greatly. He's imitating Kenshin's sword Dao. Ji Tianqing was a little excited, anxious, and expectant. "It's a pity that I can't break this array and see what the words on the stone tablet are. If I can decipher the words on the stone tablet, I'll be able to figure out who's buried in this ancient tomb." Speaking of this, he suddenly thought of a question. His eyes lit up and he asked expectantly, "By the way, senior burial of heaven, this heavenly prime array was set up by that youth. He became an array Dao grandmaster because of Kenshin's guidance. Since that's the case, you must know this array like the back of your hand, right?" The sword soul, burial of heaven, said proudly, "Of course. It's just a heavenly prime array. It's not worth mentioning to me. This array is almost impossible to break for people in the ancient star realm. After all, it's a combination of 5 heavenly prime array formation techniques. They're all profound and unfathomable array Dao knowledge." 5 array formation techniques. Ji Tianqing frowned and was a little puzzled. "That's right, there are indeed 5. The sword soul, burial of heaven, explained that Elder Chu only mentioned 4 array formation techniques. It's actually incomplete. Perhaps they're too weak and haven't realized that the array formation techniques in this array aren't just the 6 directions of stability, the heavenly 7 stars, and the octupole dragon lock. There's also the 9 cauldrons universe." Ji Tianqing was even more surprised. He thought to himself, the 9 cauldrons universe must be far more profound than the other array formation techniques, right? "Of course." The sword soul, burial of heaven, said solemnly. Ji Tianqing said with a grave expression, "In that case, the Sky Pillar sect definitely won't be able to break this array. Even the 8 great sects of the ancient star realm don't have the strength to do so. Senior, burial of heaven, can you break this array?" Burial of heaven was silent for a moment, then said indifferently, "I'm just a remnant soul now. I don't even have a physical body. How can I break this array?" Ji Tianqing was startled for a moment, then smiled embarrassedly and said, "I forgot about this problem." After thinking for a moment, he probed, "Senior, burial of heaven, although you can't break this array, you can tell me the method to break it." "I'll break it." "You." Burial of heaven was clearly stunned for a moment, then said with a contemptuous tone, "You're too weak. Even if I teach you the method to break it, it's useless. Unless you reach the origin core realm, then you can give it a try." The anticipation in Ji Tianqing's heart immediately vanished. Reach the origin core realm? How long do I have to wait? At least 2 or 3 years, right? Burial of heaven added in an indifferent tone, "You're limited by your congenital constitution. You can only stop at the 4th level of the Path of the Sword. You can't cultivate the 5th level of the Path of the Sword, so it's impossible for you to reach the Origin Core realm. Ji Tianqing was already a little disappointed, and now that he was stabbed again, he was even more speechless. After a moment, Burial of Heaven fell into a deep sleep and no longer made any sound. Ji Tianqing could only leave and return along the ancient path, climbing the rope ladder and climbing up the cliff. Just as he returned to the cliff, a black-robed deacon quickly came up to him and said in an anxious tone, "Ji Tianqing, the deacon of our sect just sent a message, asking you to return to the sect immediately." He immediately frowned and asked in confusion, "Sir Deacon, what happened?" The deacon said with a solemn expression, "It's an order from the sect master. He's asking you to return to the sect immediately and head to the Sky-Raising Hall for a discussion." Hearing that it was an order from the sect master to summon him back to the sect for a discussion, his heart immediately tightened. He had a premonition that something must have happened. "Thank you, Sir Deacon." He cupped his hands and thanked the deacon, then quickly left the cliff and followed the mine tunnel to the exit. An hour later, he left Dragon Mountain, not daring to waste any time, and rushed back to the Sky-Raising sect as fast as lightning. By the time he returned to the Sky-Raising sect, it was already 4 hours later. He went straight to the Scarlet Firmament Peak and entered the Sky-Raising Hall. He saw that sect master Chu Tianqing was already sitting on the throne, waiting with a solemn expression. Today's 7th update has been delivered. This chapter is, First Love Monster Axazi. I would like to thank this brother for the reward of 10,000 book coins. Shao he thanks. Chapter 219. Other than Chu Tianqing, there was another person in the towering sky hall. This person was Xiang Wuji. He sat on the left side of the hall with a serious expression. Although it was noon, the sun outside the hall was scorching hot. Even the air was a little hot. However, the atmosphere in the towering sky hall was a little oppressive and cold. When Ji Tianqing saw Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji's expressions, he knew that the situation was not good. Something big must have happened. He quickly walked to the hall and bowed to Chu Tianqing. "Disciple greets sect master." Chu Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and said in a low voice, "You may rise. I summoned you here because there is an important matter that requires your help." Ji Tianqing immediately revealed a puzzled expression. "Sect master, what is so important that you need my help with?" If there was really something big that even Chu Tianqing found troublesome, he did not have the ability to solve it. Chu Tianqing said in a serious tone, "I need the power of your Xianjian bloodline to open the seal under the Crimson Firmament Peak and strengthen the seal. There is a demon's den under the Crimson Firmament Peak. There is a seal formation that is suppressing an unparalleled demon from 1,000 years ago." Chu Tianqing briefly explained the matter of the demon and the seal formation. Ji Tianqing remained silent as he listened to the news carefully. Regarding this matter, he had actually heard about it a long time ago and only heard a few words about it. He was very clear that Ji Ling was highly regarded by the sect master because the Xianjian bloodline could open the seal formation. However, Ji Ling's bloodline power was too thin or her strength was too weak. In the end, she failed. Other than that, Ji Tianqing did not know much about the other matters and did not know what was going on. Now that he heard Chu Tianqing's explanation, he finally understood the whole story. After talking about the unparalleled demon and the seal formation, Chu Tianqing said in a serious tone, "A month ago, a demon expert sneaked into our sect and tried to destroy the seal formation. A few days ago, the demoness possessed the body of a female disciple of the Heart Moon sect and snuck into our sect, secretly moving around in the sect. Last night, the demoness and the high priest of the demon race worked together and led a large group of demon race experts to attack the sealing formation. They wanted to break the formation and rescue the sealed demon. Fortunately, I discovered it in time and repelled the witch and the high priest, preventing their scheme from succeeding." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's pupils suddenly shrank, and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. The witch actually possessed a female disciple of the Heart Moon sect. No wonder I always felt that there was something strange about Shu Lan. Looks like my intuition is correct. Unbelievable. That sinister and despicable witch is actually capable of using such a method. His heart was filled with shock and worry. Was Xian Xian hurt? At this time, Chu Tian Tian continued, recently, the demon race has been constantly moving, frequently sneaking into our sect to destroy the Great Array, urgently wanting to rescue the peerless demon, simply too savage. Our sect also has a few elders stationed at Dragon Mountain, studying the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb every day, causing our sect's defense to be even weaker. At this critical moment, after I discussed with the Grand Elder, we decided to immediately open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation without delay. Ji Tianqing was very clear that the last time the demon race sneaked into the sky-bearing sect was when he was imprisoned in the Dark Wind Cave. At that time, he was almost killed by the witch. Just over a month later, the witch possessed Shu Lan again and sneaked into the sky-bearing sect, cooperating with the high priest to destroy the sealing formation. In just 2 months, the demon race sneaked into the sky-bearing sect twice. Their movements were indeed frequent and very arrogant. Originally, sect leader Chu Tian Tian wanted to observe for a while and secretly cultivate him. Now that the situation was urgent, Chu Tian Tian had to carry out the plan in advance, so he summoned him to the sky-bearing palace to discuss the matter and told him the whole story. Ji Tianqing understood everything, and said to Chu Tian Tian with a solemn expression, "Sect leader, protecting the sect's safety and resisting the invasion of the demon race is the responsibility and glory of our sect's disciples. If I can work for the sect, open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation, and strengthen the sealing formation, I will not shirk my duty. But there are some things I have to say. I believe sect leader also knows that long before I entered the sky-bearing sect, Ji Ling used a scheme to steal my Xianjian bloodline. Right now, whether my bloodline is effective or not is still unknown. Moreover, my strength is weak. I cannot guarantee that I can successfully open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation." He believed that Chu Tian Tian definitely knew this. The reason he wanted to say it in person was to see Chu Tiantian's attitude. After all, with Ji Ling's example, he had to be on guard. If he couldn't open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation, how would the sect leader treat him? Of course, Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji understood what he meant. They both smiled playfully. Xiang Wuji glanced at him and said unhappily, "Kid, what are you worried about? You are now half a disciple of this old man. Even if you can't open the formation, as long as you keep your mouth shut and don't reveal the sect's secrets, no one will do anything to you." Chu Tian Tian also said with a solemn expression, "Ji Tianqing, this seat understands your worries and concerns. Actually, this seat doesn't have much hope that you can successfully open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation. This seat has made this decision because I want to do my best and leave it to fate. Moreover, putting aside your Xianjian bloodline, the martial talent and aptitude you have displayed are worthy of our sect's attention and nurturing. As long as you are loyal to the sect and swear to protect the sect's core secrets, this seat will value you as always and nurture you into a cornerstone of the sect. Otherwise, why do you think this seat gave you the sky-bearing token back then?" Since Xiang Wuji and Chu Tian Tian had expressed their stance, Ji Tianqing's doubts were dispelled. He immediately bowed to Chu Tian Tian and said in a solemn tone, "Since sect leader and senior Xiang are willing to be honest with me, then I have no more concerns and am willing to contribute to the sect's safety." Seeing this scene, Xiang Wuji grinned and revealed a mocking smile. He muttered in a low voice, "This old man has long seen that a little brat like you isn't a good person. Humph, our sect borrowed your bloodline to open the great formation, and you took the opportunity to inquire about our sect's attitude and negotiate with the sect leader?" Ji Tianqing heard his muttering, but pretended not to hear and his expression didn't change. He could be loyal to the sky-bearing sect, but this was based on the sect's affection and righteousness towards him. He wouldn't be foolishly loyal and die for the sky-bearing sect. After losing his value, he would be kicked away by the sky-bearing sect. At this moment, Chu Tian flicked his finger and a red pill flew in front of him. Ji Tianqing, this is a blood spirit pill. It can help you refine the power of your bloodline. Take this pill immediately. After you refine the medicinal power, this seat will take you to the demon's cave and reopen the Great Formation. Today's update is still 7 chapters. Requesting recommendation tickets and rewards. Chapter 220. Ji Tianqing took the spiritual blood pill and swallowed it without hesitation. He sat in the hall and began to refine it. Since Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing had already expressed their stance, he didn't have any psychological burden. If he could successfully open the 9-dragon trapping demon formation, everyone would be happy. Even if he failed to open the formation, the sky-bearing sect wouldn't punish him. As for the sealing formation, the sect master and Xiang Wuji would think of another way. The sky-bearing palace quieted down and time passed quickly. Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing waited patiently, their faces calm as they pondered. 4 hours passed quickly, and Ji Tianqing finally refined the medicinal efficacy of the spiritual blood pill. This pill was very special. It was neither a healing pill nor a pill to increase one's cultivation. Its function was to stimulate the bloodline and refine Ji Tianqing's Xian sword bloodline. Under the effects of the pill, he could clearly feel the blood in his body flowing faster and stronger, like a surging flood. In this state, his skin was dark red and his body felt hot. Chu Tianqing saw that the time was right and decisively ordered, "The time has come. We should move." With that, he and Xiang Wuji got up and left the sky-bearing palace, bringing Ji Tianqing into the depths of the palace. Not long after, the 3 of them entered a dark secret room. The secret room was pitch black, but there was a powerful formation protecting it. It emitted surging energy waves. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji entered the secret room first, followed by Ji Tianqing. There was a circular formation on the floor of the secret room. It was engraved with dense patterns, as well as many special formation symbols. The secret room was originally empty. Other than this formation, there was nothing else. When Chu Tianqing waved his hands and used a secret formation technique, the formation on the floor was activated. A dazzling white light lit up in the formation's patterns, condensing into a blazing white door. This oval-shaped door was a teleportation formation. It led directly to the demon's den deep under the red firmament peak. "Let's go," Chu Tianqing said in a low voice. He was the first to step into the teleportation gate, only to see the blazing white light of the gate flash, and he disappeared with a whoosh. Then, Xiang Wuji also entered the portal. Ji Tianqing followed closely behind and stepped into the blazing white light gate. He only saw a blur in front of his eyes, and the dazzling white light flickered before disappearing. Shwa! The next moment, the light in front of his eyes returned to darkness, and his feet landed on the ground. He stood in place without moving, his eyes scanning the surroundings. It was a cave in the depths of the earth. The cave was not big, only the size of a secret chamber. The walls were made of rough dark brown rocks. There were 2 stone lamps on the wall, emitting a dim yellow light that barely illuminated the floor of the cave. There was also a circular array on the ground, similar to the teleportation array in the secret room. Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown as the air was somewhat dry and cold, and there was also a faint fishy smell in the air. "Let's go." At this moment, Xiang Wuji reminded him. He raised his head to look ahead and saw a dimly lit passageway. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji had already entered the passageway and walked into the darkness. Ji Tianqing was unfamiliar with all of this, so he didn't ask much and quickly followed. After the 3 of them passed through a dark passageway that was hundreds of meters long, they finally entered the underground cavern. The so-called underground cavern was an empty cave with a radius of thousands of meters. The giant cave was circular, and the air was constantly filled with black fog and demonic qi. The walls were made of black rocks, and there were many spots of colorful light that seemed to be embedded with gems. The ceiling of the cave was hundreds of meters high. Ji Tianqing used the dim light to see that the ceiling of the cave was flat rock, and there were dense array patterns carved into it. The floor of the cave was made of rough rocks, and there were many sharp edges. In the corner near the wall, there was some fertile black soil, and there were some moss and mushrooms growing out of it. But the moss and mushrooms had been contaminated by the demonic qi for many years, and had already changed. They were now purple-black in color, and were emitting a faint red light. The air in the cave was not only cold, but also filled with the chill of death, and there was a thick smell of blood. As Ji Tianqing walked through the cave, he felt like he was passing through the underworld. Surrounded by the aura of death, he felt cold all over. But the most terrifying thing was that there were some gloomy whispers and roars that came out of nowhere, quietly flowing and echoing through the cave. These sounds were like weeping and complaining, like the sobbing of the wind, and like the howling of ghosts. It made one's hair stand on end and their scalps tingle. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji clearly came here often, and were used to all of this. The two of them passed through the layers of black fog, and walked straight to the center of the cave. Ji Tianqing followed them to the center of the cave, and saw a 10-meter-tall altar in front of him. The altar was in the shape of a pyramid. It was made of black rocks, gold, red, blue, and white gems, and it had an ancient aura. Gems containing various kinds of vital essence were arranged in a regular pattern on the patterns and patterns of the array, emitting a mysterious aura. At the base of the altar, there were 9 lifelike statues of divine dragons, arranged in a circle around the altar. The 9 divine dragons were of different colors, and their postures were also different. Some were like flood dragons coming out of the sea, some were like divine dragons soaring into the sky, and some were like clouds riding on fog. But the one thing in common was that no matter what postures the 9 divine dragons took, their heads were all facing the altar. But the altar was not activated, and there was no vital essence light shining. The 9 divine dragons were dim and lifeless, and they did not have the aura of life. Wisps of black fog continuously surged out from the bottom of the altar, filling the entire demon's denver. The whispers and roars that Ji Tianqing heard before also came from the bottom of the altar. They were intermittent, but never stopped. He stared at the altar for a while, and roughly understood. This ancient altar should be the 9 dragons trapping demon formation that the sect master had mentioned. As expected, Chu Tianqing turned to look at him, and said in a serious tone, "Ji Tianqing, this is the 9 dragons trapping demon formation that our sect's elder set up back then. Under this great formation, there is an ancient formation that has already been destroyed, and it seals that unparalleled demon. Now, I will teach you the method to activate the 9 dragons trapping demon formation. You must remember it well, and you cannot make the slightest mistake. After you learn it, the Grand Elder and I will work together to help you activate the formation. Whether our sect can obtain another 100 years of peace and stability depends on your success." Chu Tianqing's expression was solemn, and his tone was serious. Xiang Wuji glanced at Ji Tianqing, and nodded at him with a serious expression. Chapter 221. Ji Tianqing understood that this matter was related to the sky-bearing sect's 1,000 years of foundation. He felt that he had a heavy responsibility and didn't dare to slack off. Then, Chu Tianqing waved his hands and used a secret technique to force out an egg-sized ball of golden light from his palms. He slowly extended his hand and pressed it against Ji Tianqing's forehead. That dazzling ball of golden light immediately drilled into Ji Tianqing's mind. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing felt countless amounts of information rush into his mind. His head was flooded with information that made him dizzy. Without a doubt, the golden light that Chu Tianqing sent into his mind was the method to activate the 9 dragons trapping demon array. The 9 dragons trapping demon array was a heaven origin level array. It was incomparably profound. Even the method to activate it contained a vast amount of information. If Chu Tianqing were to use his mouth to explain, he wouldn't be able to finish it even if he talked for a day and a night. For a heaven origin level powerhouse like him, of course, he had better methods to teach Ji Tianqing the method to activate the array. Ji Tianqing endured the impact of the endless information in his mind. It took him a long time to wake up. After the dizziness in his mind dissipated, he immediately sat cross-legged on the ground. He closed his eyes and silently refined the information in his mind, learning the method to activate the array. Time passed little by little. The demon cave was cold, dark, and silent. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji stood beside Ji Tianqing, silently protecting him and patiently waiting. After a full 3 hours, it was already late at night. Ji Tianqing finally refined the ball of golden light and grasped the method to activate the 9 dragons trapping demon array. He opened his eyes and saw Chu Tianqing looking at him, his eyes filled with anticipation. Ji Tianqing, how's your learning? Ji Tianqing nodded. Don't worry, Sect Master. I have already grasped the method to activate the array. We can begin now. Chu Tianqing revealed a gratified expression and nodded. Very good. Xiang Wuji smiled silently and whispered to Chu Tianqing, this old man told you a long time ago that this kid's talent in arrays is extraordinary. Do you believe me now? Chu Tianqing silently nodded and revealed a knowing smile. Ji Tianqing saw the two of them acting so mysteriously and couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. However, it was a critical moment for the restart array now, and he could not probe further. Ji Tianqing, come with me. Chu Tianqing was the first to ascend the altar and walked towards the top. Ji Tianqing hurriedly followed after him, stepping on the steps of the altar and ascending to the top. Under Chu Tianqing's instructions, he climbed to the top of the altar and sat cross-legged on a circular stone plate. This stone plate was only the size of a water jar, but it was the core array disk of the 9 dragons trapping devil formation. It was engraved with mysterious array patterns, densely packed grooves and patterns. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji sat down on either side of him. Their palms glowed with true essence as they pressed down on his shoulders. Suddenly, Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that the palms of these two people contained a majestic flood of true essence that could pour out at any time and drown him. Ji Tianqing, you can begin. Hearing Chu Tianqing's voice, Ji Tianqing hurriedly collected his thoughts and abandoned all distracting thoughts. His expression was solemn as he raised his palms and made a special hand gesture. He drew out a mysterious arc as he activated the formation. At the same time, Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing's palms also poured enormous amounts of true essence into his body. At that moment, Ji Tianqing's body swelled violently like an inflated balloon. The true essence of the two heavens prime cultivators was too terrifying. It almost made him explode and die. Fortunately, he immediately calmed down and waved his hands to activate the array. The endless true essence turned into 2 5-colored pillars of light and poured out. Bang! Bang! With a muffled sound, the 2 5-colored pillars of light poured onto the circular array disk, immediately lighting up the array patterns on the disk. The dark brown array disk instantly became a riot of colors and lit up with dazzling 5-colored brilliance. The densely packed array patterns also flickered with 5-colored true essence radiance and emitted a majestic true essence fluctuation. Ji Tianqing saw with his own eyes that after the 2 5-colored pillars of true essence poured into the array disk, they were dispersed by the disk and poured into the altar. Thus, starting from the formation plate beneath him, the altar was gradually lit up from top to bottom, lighting up with dazzling multicolored light. As Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji continued to pour their true essence into the altar, the entire altar became dazzling. The patterns on the altar also became lifelike and shone brightly. A majestic and mighty aura emerged spontaneously from the altar and spread out in all directions. In less than a quarter of an hour, the entire altar was lit up. The boundless suppressive power emanating from the altar also enveloped the entire demon's den, suppressing everything within a radius of 1,000 meters. It was Ji Tianqing's first time touching the heavens prime array. Feeling the majestic power of the altar, he was shocked. However, this was only the first step in reactivating the 9 dragons trapping demon array. He didn't dare to waste any time and hurriedly waved his hands to activate the array. He carefully controlled the array disk and activated the array in the altar bit by bit. This process was very slow, difficult, and dangerous. There was no room for error. If he made a mistake, all his previous efforts would be wasted or he would suffer a backlash from the array. It was very likely that his life would be in danger. He had to abandon all distracting thoughts and focus on activating the array. He wasn't in a hurry. After a few minutes, the array disk below him started to change. A few patterns started to twist and turn. This meant that a small portion of the array in the altar had been activated. After a few minutes, a few more patterns on the array disk started to move and produce some mysterious changes. After a few minutes, a dozen patterns on the array disk seemed to have come alive. After an hour, as time passed, the patterns on the array disk changed more and more. The array in the altar was also gradually being activated. When Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji saw the subtle changes in the array disk, they were gratified. Their eyes were filled with anticipation. Ji Tianqing's array skills didn't disappoint them. They saw the light of success in reactivating the array. Before they knew it, 6 hours had passed. The thousands of patterns on the array disk all seemed to have been given life and started to move according to a special pattern. The entire altar was no longer lifeless. Not only was it shining brightly, but all the arrays were activated. A majestic aura surged around the altar. At this time, Chu Tianqing's expression was serious. He said in a sonorous voice, "Ji Tianqing, we are very close to success. Now there is one last step. You need to inject your blood essence into the array disk and activate the array with Xian Jian's bloodline. When the 9 divine dragon statues light up, the 9 dragons trapping demon array will be successfully activated. Success or failure depends on this." Chapter 222. Hearing Chu Tianqing's words, Ji Tianqing was also filled with anticipation. Without hesitation, he pricked his fingertip and forced out a drop of blood from his heart. He dripped it onto the disc array beneath him. A drop of crimson blood dripped onto the disc array and spread outwards along the grooves. The disc array was still glowing brightly. The altar did not seem to have changed at all. Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji's hearts were in their throats. They stared at the disc array, hoping for a miraculous change. The second drop of crimson blood dripped from Ji Tianqing's fingertip onto the disc array. The crimson blood continued to spread outwards along the lines of the disc array. The disc array finally showed some changes. It was dyed with a layer of crimson. The power of the altar seemed to have increased as well. It shone even brighter than before. When the third drop of blood dripped onto the disc array finally underwent a miraculous change. The patterns on the disc array sped up, intertwining and twisting. The array inside the altar sped up as well. It intertwined and overlapped with each other, producing a miraculous change. The 3 of them could clearly feel that the power of the altar was increasing rapidly. In just a few breaths, it had doubled. Buzz. Buzz buzz. The array inside the altar sped up and exploded with a vast amount of power. The entire altar began to tremble. The 9 dragons around the altar also shone with a faint 5-colored brilliance, exuding powerful energy waves. Seeing this, Chu Tianqing and Xiang Wuji looked at each other. Their eyes were filled with joy. This is great. Ji Tianqing's blood is indeed useful. We're finally going to succeed. The 2 of them were excited. They stared at the disc array with sparkling eyes and secretly clenched their fists. Ji Tianqing was also overjoyed. However, he did not dare to relax. He continued to force out a 4th drop of blood and dripped it onto the disc array. The changes on the disc array sped up. It shone with a five-colored brilliance, forming huge seal words and array symbols. The 9 divine dragons around the altar also became more and more dazzling, becoming lifelike and extremely imposing. As time went by, the 9-dragon trapping devil formation was about to be fully activated. It emitted a domineering aura that could suppress everything. That formless aura enveloped the entire demon's den. The power of the array enveloped the entire demon's den and was constantly strengthening the seal. The unparalleled demon sealed under the formation also sensed the powerful aura of the 9 dragons trapping demon formation and seemed to be panicking. The devil struggled violently, roaring and howling non-stop. Large clouds of black mist surged out from under the altar, from which came shrill howls that were filled with resentment. Ji Tianqing's face turned pale under the demonic sound, and his consciousness became a little blurry. Xiang Wuji and Chu Tianqing hurriedly channeled their power to protect him, preventing him from being hurt by the demon's roar. Finally, the array formation of the 9 divine dragons was fully activated, emitting an aura that could suppress heaven and earth. The 9 divine dragon statues were connected to the 9 mountain peaks of the Sky Pillar sect. They imperceptibly gathered the power of the 9 mountain peaks. The so-called 9-dragon trapping demon formation used the power of the 9 mountain peaks of the Sky Pillar sect to form a formation to suppress the unparalleled demon. As long as the Sky Pillar sect did not decline and the 9-dragon spirit veins were not destroyed, this 9-dragon trapping demon formation would be able to grow and multiply, forever suppressing the demon. At this time, Ji Tianqing's Xian Jian bloodline power had already activated the 9-dragon trapping demon formation. The altar released a dazzling 5-colored curtain of light that extended in all directions, condensing into a formation light barrier that was 1,000 meters wide. Once the formation light barrier was formed, the 9-dragon trapping demon formation would be fully activated and complete. At this time, the unparalleled demon in the sealing formation was also furious to the extreme. Endless black mist and demonic energy crazily surged out from under the altar, condensing into large patches of black clouds in the demon's den. An incomparably violent impact fiercely slammed into the ground of the demon's den, causing the entire demon's den to shake. Muffled rumbling sounds continuously came from the ground, and huge cracks appeared on the ground. Suddenly, the unparalleled demon sensed Ji Tianqing's presence and was stunned. Its angry roar came to an abrupt stop, and the shaking ground calmed down. After a moment of silence, the unparalleled demon suddenly let out a shrill howl filled with shock and anger. The howl was in the language of the demon race, and its voice was somewhat hoarse and difficult to distinguish. However, Ji Tianqing could clearly hear the resentment, hatred, and murderous intent in his voice. He could even feel that the howl of the unparalleled demon was directed at him. In just a few short breaths, the 5-colored curtain of light completely enveloped the demon's den, forming a semicircular formation light barrier. This formation gathered the power of the entire Sky Pillar sect and firmly suppressed the unparalleled demon. The unparalleled demon no longer made any sound or movement. It could not even release the black mist, demonic energy, or cold energy of death. The demon's den calmed down. Xiang Wuji was proficient in the language of the demon race and had already understood the howl. He glanced at Ji Tianqing with a strange expression, and a strange light flashed in his eyes as he vaguely suspected something. Ji Tianqing asked with a puzzled expression, "Sect Master, Senior Xiang, what did that unparalleled demon say just now?" Chu Tianqing did not quite understand the demon's words, so he looked at Xiang Wuji questioningly. Xiang Wuji said with a solemn expression, "The demon only said a few words. It's actually you. Even you have such a day." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing frowned, feeling even more puzzled. His intuition told him that the demon's words were directed at him. But he did not understand what the demon meant. At this moment, Chu Tianqing revealed a relieved smile and said, "We have successfully activated the 9 dragons trapping demon formation and finally strengthened the seal. We have won another 100 years of peace for our sect. Ji Tianqing, you have done a great service for our sect this time." This king will carefully consider how to reward you. Let's go, let's leave this place first. Chu Tianxing was in an extremely good mood. After he finished speaking, he led Ji Tianqing down the altar. At the same time, 9 mountain-like divine dragon phantoms appeared in the pitch-black night sky above the Sky Pillar sect. The 9 divine dragon phantoms shone with a dazzling 5-colored brilliance, illuminating the night sky within a radius of a few hundred miles. They erupted with a domineering aura that suppressed heaven and earth. Countless disciples of the Sky Pillar sect were awakened by this phenomenon, and they all revealed astonished and aghast expressions. The 2 sects thousands of miles away from the Sky Pillar sect also saw the divine dragon phantoms in the sky and were shocked by this earth-shaking phenomenon. In the demon cave thousands of miles away from the Sky Pillar sect, the High Priest and Blood Moon Infanta also saw the phenomenon in the night sky. Chapter 223. After a long time, the 9 divine dragon phantoms in the night sky gradually dissipated. Everything returned to tranquility. The night was still dark as if nothing had happened. On the mountain peak where the demon cave was located, the Blood Moon Countess and the High Priest stood side by side on the mountain peak. Facing the night wind, they looked in the direction of the Sky Pillar sect, their eyes filled with hatred. After a long time, the Blood Moon Countess cursed in a low voice, "Damned Sky Pillar sect. That group of human reptiles who deserve to die 10,000 deaths." They actually activated a new sealing formation and completely suppressed His Majesty the Demon Monarch. The High Priest narrowed his eyes, a cold glint surging in his eyes. He said in a low voice, "I didn't expect the Sky Pillar sect to act so quickly. Our operation last night failed, and they reactivated the 9 dragons formation tonight. Fortunately, we had the smoke net umbrella. Otherwise, we would have died under Chu Tianqing's sword last night." As he spoke, he subconsciously touched the left side of his chest. There was a long and narrow sword wound there. It was so deep that the bone could be seen. The skin and flesh of the wound were as black as charcoal, preventing the wound from healing. Just a little bit more and the sword would have pierced his heart and taken his life. The Blood Moon Countess wore a loose black robe and a cloak, only revealing a pair of blood-red eyes. When she heard the High Priest's words, deep hatred surged in her eyes. During the operation last night, her primordial spirit had possessed Shulan's body. After being seen through by Chu Tianxing, she had been stabbed in the heart and throat during the fight with Chu Tianxing. However, the one who had been killed was Shulan. Her primordial spirit had escaped from Shulan's corpse. With the High Priest's help, she had successfully escaped from the Sky Pillar sect. Thinking of the fierce battle last night, as well as the more than 30 demon race guards killed by Chu Tianxing, her hatred for the Sky-bearing sect grew even deeper. After a moment of silence, she turned to look at the High Priest beside her and asked, "High Priest, the Sky Pillar sect has reactivated a sealing formation. His Majesty the Demon Monarch definitely won't be able to break that formation in a short time. We also won't be able to sneak into the Sky Pillar sect and destroy that formation. What should we do next?" The High Priest frowned and pondered for a moment. Then, a mocking sneer appeared in his eyes. He obviously had an idea. He said with a playful tone, "Princess, you know that humans are the most hypocritical, cunning, and greedy race. For the sake of benefits, they will scheme against each other and even fight to the death. If we want to deal with the Sky Pillar sect, we don't necessarily have to do it ourselves. When the time is right, we can borrow the strength of other human sections." Keek. At this point, the High Priest sneered sinisterly. The Blood Moon Infanta frowned and asked doubtfully, "High Priest, do you already have a plan? How are you going to borrow the strength of the other sects?" Of course I have a better plan." The High Priest looked as if he had a card up his sleeve. With a confident tone, he said, "Princess, you should stay in the cave and recuperate. After a while, I will show you a good show about the internal conflicts of the humankind." Hearing this, the Blood Moon Commandery Princess became more and more curious. High Priest, do you mean, we can use the Tianjin sect? The High Priest purposely kept them in suspense and nodded with a smile. At dawn, Ji Tianqing returned to the Tempest Courtyard. When he left the underground demon's cave, Chu Tianxing gave him 2 dew pills to help him recover his vitality. After all, in order to restart the 9 dragons trapping devil array, he had consumed 4 drops of his heart's blood essence. Heart's blood essence was different from ordinary blood. It was the condensed essence of one's bloodline and formed from the accumulation of one's true essence. It had a powerful effect. Every time a martial artist lost a drop of heart's blood essence, his vitality would be damaged. If too much heart's blood essence was lost, it would affect one's strength and realm, which would lead to serious consequences. Tonight, Ji Tianqing had consumed his heart's blood essence and was fully focused on controlling the 9 dragons trapping devil array. His body and mind had consumed a lot of energy. When he returned to his room, his face was still pale and his breath was unstable. He hurriedly entered the secret chamber and took the dew pills given to him by Chu Tianxing. He hurriedly circulated his energy to recover his vitality. Unknowingly, a day had passed. On the morning of the 2nd day, he finally refined the medicinal effects of the jade dew pill and finally recovered to normal. After finishing his cultivation, he didn't leave the secret chamber. Recalling the words of the unparalleled demon, his heart was still full of doubts and doubts. He vaguely had some guesses in his heart, but he couldn't be sure. Therefore, he decided to ask the sword soul of the burial of heaven. He focused his consciousness in the black hole in his dantian and entered Kenshin's tomb with a swish. Flying through the gray sky and the cold and desolate wasteland, he soon arrived at the towering sword steel. Senior burial of heaven, I have something to ask. Ji Tianqing saluted the sword steel and shouted loudly. After a while, the deep voice of the burial of heaven came out from the towering sword steel. Boy, what do you want? Ji Tianqing hurriedly explained, Senior burial of heaven, the matter is like this. In the depths of our sect's Red Cloud Peak, there is an unparalleled demon suppressed. According to the sect master, 1,000 years ago, the unparalleled demon went on a killing spree in the Star Ancient Realm and was defeated by an expert sword. He briefly explained the legend of the unparalleled demon and what happened to him in the Devil's Den the night before. After he finished, the tone of the sword soul of the burial of heaven changed a little. It seemed to have become a little subtle. Boy, after you activated the seal, the unparalleled demon roared at you. It seemed to be full of hatred and killing intent towards you. Are you sure that the demon's roar was targeted at you? Ji Tianqing nodded with a solemn expression and said, Senior burial of heaven, I believe in my intuition. The burial of heaven was silent for a moment. No one knew what it was thinking. After a while, it asked again, what did the unparalleled demon say to you? Ji Tianqing answered truthfully, the demon spoke the demon race's language. I couldn't understand it. But our sect's grand elder told me that the demon was talking about, it was actually you. You also have a day like this. Hearing this, the burial of heaven was silent again. It didn't say a word. Ji Tianqing asked with a face full of doubt, Senior burial of heaven, I'm just a 17-year-old boy from a secular kingdom. I definitely have nothing to do with the unparalleled demon from 1,000 years ago. What the unparalleled demon said definitely has nothing to do with me. So I'm guessing that the unparalleled demon might have something to do with Kenshin. Was that sentence said to Kenshin? The burial of heaven was still silent, as if it was thinking about how to answer. Ji Tianqing waited patiently for a long time before he heard its old and indifferent voice say, there is heaven's will in the unseen world. Many things seem to be coincidental, but they are actually heaven's will. Mortals try to guess heaven's will in vain. They always want to understand everything and explore the unknown. But in the end, they often don't have a good ending. Chapter 224. After hearing the burial of heaven's answer, Ji Tianqing couldn't help but frown and secretly criticize it. Senior Burial of Heaven, you just need to tell me whether that unparalleled demon has anything to do with Kenshin. You said a lot of irrelevant and illusory things, but it's actually the same as saying nothing at all. Of course, he knew that the Burial of Heaven's words had a deeper meaning, and he needed to figure it out himself. But he just wanted to solve the doubts in his heart and get a clear answer. But the Burial of Heaven seemed to have fallen into a deep sleep and no longer paid attention to him. Ji Tianqing could only leave Kenshin's tomb and secretly ponder over its words. He pondered for a long time and vaguely had an answer in his heart, but he couldn't be sure. Moreover, on the basis of this answer, more doubts and conjectures emerged in his mind. All kinds of doubts and conjectures entangled in his mind, making it impossible for him to calm down for a long time. In the end, he simply suppressed these thoughts in the bottom of his heart and ignored them. If the Burial of Heaven doesn't want to say it, then forget it. Let nature take its course. Maybe it's just like it said. When the time comes, I'll naturally understand. With this thought, his heart calmed down and he began to cultivate. 5 days later, in the Tianjin sect. Early in the morning, an old man with white hair and a beard and an immortal aura came to the front gate of the Tianjin sect. This old man wore a white robe and was tall and burly. His long hair, eyebrows, and beard were all snow white. His complexion was ruddy, and his eyes were clear and contained a bright light. It was obvious that his strength was extraordinary. He held a horsetail whisk with a golden handle and silver thread in his hands and stood calmly in front of the gate, asking to pay a visit to the Tianjin sect master. Although the guards guarding the gate didn't know who this old man was, they didn't dare to neglect him when they saw his posture of an enlightened expert. Their words were quite respectful. "Senior, if you want to pay a visit to our sect master, please report your name or title. Otherwise, this junior will not be able to report to the sect master." The captain of the guards bowed respectfully and said carefully. The white-haired old man's posture was proud. He looked at the guard captain with disdain and said expressionlessly, "This seat's Taoist name is Tianjizi. The younger generation of the martial arts world respectfully calls this seat Taoist Tianji." Taoist's title, Taoist, was something that ordinary experts would never dare to use. "For what reason do you want to pay a visit to our sect master?" Taoist Tianji raised his eyebrows, a hint of anger appearing between his white eyebrows. "You only need to say the words 9-Dragon Spirit Vein Diagram to your sect master, and your sect master will come personally to welcome me." The guard captain had no idea what the 9-Dragon Spiritual Pulse Diagram was. But when he saw Taoist Tianji's powerful aura and his displeasure, he did not dare to say anything more. "Please wait here for a moment." The guard captain dropped these words and hurriedly turned around to enter the sect to report the news. Taoist Tianji turned his back to the gate and closed his eyes to rest. He quietly waited for the Tianjin sect master to personally come to greet him. Just as he expected, about half an hour later, a blue light flew out of the Tianjin sect. The Tianjin sect master condensed a pair of wings with his blue true essence and rushed to the gate as fast as lightning. He landed on the ground. His face was expressionless, but his eyes contained a hint of surprise and expectation. After landing, he stared at the back of Taoist Tianji, secretly sizing him up. The guards at the gate bowed to the Tianjin sect master when they saw him. Taoist Tianji clearly knew that the Tianjin sect master had come, but he turned a deaf ear to the guard's salutes. He still closed his eyes to rest and maintained an arrogant posture. Seeing this, the Tianjin sect master felt that Taoist Tianji's aura was extraordinary. He quickly walked behind Taoist Tianji and bowed. The Tianjin sect master greets Taoist Tianji. Taoist Tianji slowly turned around and looked at him expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "Sect master, please don't be so courteous." The Tianjin sect master stood up and made a "please" gesture. He said with a smile, "Taoist Tianji, please sit in the main hall. We'll talk later." "That's exactly what I was thinking." Taoist Tianji smiled. He stepped through the gate and entered the Tianjin sect. Not long after, the two of them entered the main hall of the Tianjin sect. Only the short and stout guest elder Huangfu was present in the spacious and luxuriously decorated main hall. After the two of them met, they exchanged pleasantries and flattered each other before sitting down to drink tea. The Tianjin sect master and guest elder Huangfu had never heard of Taoist Tianji's title. However, they felt that Taoist Tianji's aura was extraordinary and that he had mentioned the nine-dragon spirit vein diagram. Therefore, they treated him with respect. After the three of them chatted for a while, the Tianjin sect master felt an itch in his heart and took the initiative to ask about business. Taoist Tianji, just now you had the gate guard report that the nine-dragon spirit vein diagram was mentioned. What does Taoist Tianji mean? Taoist Tianji slowly put down his teacup and glanced at guest elder Huangfu with a smile. This matter is related to the mysteries of heaven. I can't reveal it here. Hearing his words, the Tianjin sect master and guest elder Huangfu immediately understood his meaning. Guest elder Huangfu tactfully stood up and bowed with cupped hands. Since sect master has something important to discuss with Taoist Tianji, I won't disturb you. I'll take my leave now. Then, guest elder Huangfu turned around and left. When only the two of them were left in the main hall, Taoist Tianji slowly said, for nearly 100 years, I've been traveling around the Tianxian continent, observing the mysteries of heaven and monitoring the world. A few years ago, I've been wandering around the Tianxian region. I've observed that the will of heaven has descended here. It's the time when the winds and clouds are gathering and a golden dragon is about to appear. Although Taoist Tianji's words were vague, the Tianjin sect master frowned and thought for a moment before he guessed what he meant. Taoist Tianji, you mean, the winds and clouds are gathering in the Tianxian region, and the dragon god is about to appear? Taoist Tianji nodded slightly and said seriously, that's right. The situation in the Tianxian region hasn't changed for 1,000 years. It's not in line with heaven's will. The great Tao that I've been cultivating all my life is the great Tao of heaven's will. Naturally, it's in line with heaven's will and people's hearts. According to heaven's will, the situation in the Tianxian region should change. A glint flashed across the Tianjin sect master's eyes. He vaguely understood something. He quickly asked, Taoist Tianji is right. The situation in the Tianxian region should change. But I wonder, who is the dragon god that you're talking about? Taoist Tianji turned his head and looked at him with a playful smile. I've personally come to your sect to talk to you about this. Who do you think is the dragon god that's about to change the situation in the Tianxian region? These words confirmed the Tianjin sect master's guess, making him secretly happy. He asked with a smile, Taoist Tianji, what can you teach me? How can I turn into a dragon and change the situation in the Tianxian region? Taoist Tianji revealed an unfathomable smile. He took out a scroll from his sleeve and placed it in front of him. This nine-dragon spiritual vein map will definitely allow you to borrow the power of the winds and clouds to soar into the sky and turn into a dragon. Shock flashed through the Tianjin sect master's heart. He stared at the scroll in disbelief and didn't dare to take it. He knew very well that if the scroll really contained the nine-dragon spiritual vein map, he could smoothly destroy the nine-dragon spiritual vein of the Sky Pillar sect and cause their sect to decline and be destroyed. However, the nine-dragon spiritual vein map was a treasure that he had schemed and used all his means to obtain. Taoist Tianji, who had appeared out of nowhere, suddenly came to him and placed this treasure in front of him. Chapter 225. The Tianjin sect master sized up Taoist master Heavenly Secret, inwardly weighing the pros and cons. A moment later, he reached out and picked up the scroll on the table, unfolded it, and carefully examined it. To him, it didn't matter what Taoist master Heavenly Secret's goal was, as long as this nine-dragon spirit vein diagram was real. When he unfolded the scroll and saw the diagram drawn on it, his eyes widened in disbelief. He saw that the half-meter wide and 1-meter long scroll had a diagram of a spirit vein formation drawn on it. The dense lines clearly outlined the topography of the 9 mountain peaks. The 9 dragon veins were clearly distinguishable, forming the 9 dragon spirit vein formation. The formation base and key positions of each dragon vein were marked. There was no doubt that this was a clear and detailed 9 dragon spirit vein diagram. Compared to the 9 dragon spirit vein diagram deduced by guest elder Huangfu, this diagram was many times more detailed. He only gave it a cursory glance, but he had an answer in his heart. This diagram was most likely real. This was the diagram he yearned for even in his dreams. After pondering for a moment, he asked Taoist Master Heavenly Secret, Taoist Master, the 9 dragon spirit vein diagram is a secret of the Sky Pillar sect. How did Taoist Master obtain this diagram? Moreover, to be frank, our sect has no friendship with Taoist Master. Why did Taoist Master help our sect so much? Taoist Master Heavenly Secret calmly stroked his white beard and said indifferently, "This is heaven's will. Heaven's secrets cannot be revealed." The Tianjin sect master's expression didn't change, but in his heart, he cursed, "Old swindler." The smile on his face didn't diminish, and he continued to ask, "Taoist Master really is an expert who understands heaven's secrets and monitors the world. Taoist Master's gift of this diagram is indeed a great gift to our sect. How should we thank Taoist Master?" When it came to gifts and rewards, Taoist Master Heavenly Secret's expression changed slightly. He smiled and said, "While traveling the continent, this Taoist Master is busy observing the hearts of the people and conveying heaven's will. I have no time to cultivate in seclusion. If sect master has the heart to thank me, you might as well offer some spirit stones as a token of gratitude to the heavens." The Tianjin sect muttered in his heart, "Stinky Taoist, you make yourself sound so dignified. You just want the spirit stones, don't you?" Spirit stones were precious gems produced from mineral veins in treasured lands, containing abundant and pure true yuan. Martial artists could directly absorb the heaven and earth spirit chi from spirit stones to cultivate, and the effect was much better than taking pills. Therefore, spirit stones were highly sought after by warriors in the martial arts world. It was a pity that the number of spirit stones was so small that an ordinary mine could only produce a few dozen spirit stones every year. Even the Tianjin sect, which was the second largest sect in the world, only had a few thousand spirit stones, and that was after many years of accumulation. The Tianjin sect master still maintained his smile. He nodded and said, "You're right. Compared to your hard work, a few spirit stones are nothing." Then, he took out 30 spirit stones from his space ring and placed them on the table. Each spirit stone was the size of an egg, and it was 5-colored. It contained a vast amount of spirit chi. The Tianjin sect master pushed the 30 spirit stones in front of Taoist Tianji and said with a smile, "This is a small gift from our sect. I hope Taoist Tianji will accept it." Taoist Tianji glanced at the spirit stones and shook his head with a smile. "Sect master, since you want to carry out the will of the heavens and change the situation of the Tianjin region, how can you be so insincere? You think it's too little." The Tianjin sect master muttered in his heart. He took out another 30 spirit stones from his space ring and placed them in front of Taoist Tianji. "You're right. The will of the heavens cannot be offended. I'm also sincerely thanking the heavens. Unfortunately, our sect's foundation is shallow, and I'm embarrassed to have so many spirit stones." His meaning was obvious. Our Tianjin sect is a small sect, and I don't have many spirit stones. You should be content with the amount I'm giving you. Taoist Master Tianji was also well aware of this. Therefore, he no longer put on an act. Instead, he went with the flow and accepted the 60 spirit stones. With a wave of his sleeve, the 60 shining spirit stones on the table were all taken away. "Sect master, since you're so sincere, you'll definitely be able to meet the will of the heavens and become a divine dragon that can stir up the situation and change the situation. Taoist Tianji said with a smile, and got up to leave with his horsetail whisk. Sect Master, you must remember that this matter should not be delayed. If you miss the opportunity, I'm afraid the will of the heavens will change again. The Tianjian Sect Master hurriedly got up to see Taoist Tianji off. He didn't stop until he reached the door of the main hall. Watching Taoist Tianji's back disappear into the distance, the smile on his face gradually disappeared, and a look of disdain appeared on his face. After a while, when Taoist Tianji was far away, he returned to the main hall. He took out the 9-dragon spiritual vein map and carefully observed it. At this time, guest Huangfu, who had been waiting in the side hall, rushed into the main hall and came to the side of the Tianjian Sect Master. Sect Master, did Taoist Tianji leave? He raised his head and looked out of the main hall, then looked down and saw the scroll on the table. He was stunned. This is a formation map. The Tianjian Sect Master nodded and said with a smile, this is the 9-dragon spiritual vein map. I bought it for 60 spiritual stones. Ah! Guest Huangfu was surprised and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sect Master, you bought the 9-dragon spiritual vein map for a mere 60 spiritual stones. Were you deceived by Taoist Tianji? The Tianjian Sect Master nodded with a smile and said, that's right. That bullshit Taoist Tianji, he's just an old swindler. He talked nonsense about turning into a dragon by chance, about the will of the heavens and the people's hearts. He even said that I'm the divine dragon that can change the situation of the Tianshan region. Ha 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 ha, who would believe that? Guest Huangfu became more and more confused. He frowned and said, Sect Master, since Taoist Tianji is full of lies, why do you still believe him? Although 60 spiritual stones isn't much, it's still a considerable amount of wealth. The Tianjian Sect Master waved his hand and pointed at the 9-dragon spiritual vein map on the table. He said with a smile, Guest Huangfu, although Taoist Tianji is a swindler, this formation map is real. Take a closer look. Is there any problem with this formation map? Guest Huangfu was a formation master. After hearing the words, he stared at the formation map and observed it. He first exclaimed in surprise, then his expression became more and more joyful. In the end, he couldn't help but laugh in surprise. Ha ha ha, it really is the 9-dragon spiritual vein map. This formation map is more detailed than the one I deduced. The dragon veins and formation bases are clearly marked. It's reasonable and exquisite. Sect Master. Your 60 spiritual stones are really a big profit. Guest Huangfu couldn't help but applaud. After calming down, he asked in confusion, Sect Master, this 9-dragon spiritual vein map is a secret of the Sky Pillar sect. Not to mention 60 spiritual stones, even 600 or 6,000 spiritual stones can't buy it. Who is this Taoist Tianji? What is his purpose? Why did he give this treasure to our sect? The Tianjian Sect Master nodded slightly and said with a playful smile, he said that he traveled the continent and cultivated the great path of heavenly secrets to convey the will of heaven. How can I believe such nonsense? In my opinion, this Taoist Tianji is most likely someone else in disguise. It's very likely that this person is from another sect or a certain force. He wants to borrow our sect's power to deal with the Sky Pillar sect. After all, the Sky Pillar sect has been the leader of the 8 sects and has controlled the Tianshan region for thousands of years. It's not just our sect. The other sects and major forces have long been dissatisfied with the Sky Pillar sect. Chapter 226. After listening to the Tianjian Sect Master's analysis, Guest Elder Huangfu came to a sudden realization. He praised from the bottom of his heart, Sect Master is brilliant. No matter who Taoist Heavenly Secrets is or what his motives are, the sect only used 60 spirit stones to exchange for the 9-dragon spirit vein diagram. This is great wisdom. With this diagram, our sect will soon be able to destroy the Sky Pillar sect's spirit vein and destroy their 1,000-year-old foundation. Guest Elder Huangfu beamed with joy at this point, and his tone was full of anticipation. At that time, our sect will definitely replace the Sky Pillar sect and control the Tianshan region. Sect Master will also be able to rule the Tianshan region and become the overlord of the region. These words made the Tianjian sect master feel very comfortable, and he couldn't help but sneer proudly. Yes. That damned Sky Pillar sect took back Dragon Mountain and discovered the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb. They wanted to snatch away the fortune that originally belonged to our sect. Now it seems that our sect is well supported, while the Sky Pillar sect is unjust. The great formation guarding the ancient tomb is very profound. The Sky Pillar sect definitely won't be able to crack it in a short time. After our sect destroys the Sky Pillar sect's 9-dragon spirit vein, not only will we destroy the Sky Pillar sect, but the 1,000-year-old ancient tomb will also belong to our sect. Guest Elder Huangfu nodded in agreement and asked, Sect Master, now that the spirit vein diagram is in our hands, when should we take action? The Tianjian sect master waved his hand and smiled confidently. There's no need to rush. Let's first study this spirit vein diagram and determine its authenticity. Moreover, the Sky Pillar sect has many powerhouses and is heavily guarded. It won't be easy to destroy the 9-dragon spirit vein. We must plan carefully. This subordinate understands. Guest Elder Huangfu nodded quickly. Then, the two left the guest hall and entered a secret room to study the spirit vein diagram. In a mountain range 100 miles away from the Tianjian sect, Taoist Heavenly Secrets, dressed in a white robe and holding a horsetail whisk, was running through the mountain forest at high speed. He was extremely fast, and his clothes fluttered as he ran, leaving white afterimages behind him. A moment later, he entered the depths of the mountain forest. Seeing that no one was following him and that there was no one around, he revealed his true body. Shwa! His body twisted and changed, and a large cloud of black fog gushed out. The white robe and horsetail whisk also disappeared. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a burly old man who was more than 2 meters tall with purple skin all over his body. He had a head full of purple hair that was tied into dozens of small braids. He was dressed in a sinister black robe and had a pair of large, fan-like feet. There were also many tattoos on his neck and arms, which made him look very sinister and evil. Without a doubt, this person was the high priest of the demon race. He twisted his neck and limbs, and as he stretched his body, he sneered and muttered, "Hee, the Tianjian sect's leader is such a stingy villain. He's so stingy. I gave him a spirit vein array diagram. It's such a precious treasure, and he only used 60 spirit stones to get rid of me." Speaking up to this point, he was filled with anger and hatred. His tone was cold as he shouted, "Umph. The human race is sinister and cunning. This Tianjian sect leader will never achieve anything great. Even if he uses the spirit vein array diagram I gave him to destroy the 9-dragon spirit vein of the Sky Pillar sect, it's impossible for him to control the Tianshan region. When the time comes, when I rescue His Majesty the Demon King, I'll definitely massacre the ancient star realm." After saying that, the high priest's body twisted and turned into a cloud of black fog. He shuttled through the mountain forest as fast as lightning, rushing back in the direction of the demon cave. Inside the Sky Pillar sect. In the Sky Pillar hall, Chu Tiansheng sat on the sect master's throne with a dignified aura. Several elders stood in the hall. Yin Yao and Ji Tianqing were also among them. Everyone was discussing something. Chu Tianqing's voice was dignified as he announced in a loud and clear voice, "Everyone, I've gathered all of you here today to discuss something very important." Hearing this, the elders looked at each other and exchanged glances. They all smiled knowingly. Obviously, everyone had already guessed what Chu Tiansheng was going to announce. After all, the heaven and earth anomaly that night was very shocking. The 9 divine dragon phantoms illuminated the world and could be seen from thousands of miles away. Chu Tianxing revealed a gratified smile and announced loudly, "Recently, the demon race has been rampant. They've repeatedly attacked our sect, trying to destroy the seal array and rescue the unparalleled demon. Just 5 days ago, the Grand Elder and I brought Ji Tianxing into the demon cave and successfully reactivated the 9 dragon trapping demon formation. After the restart array, the unparalleled demon has been completely suppressed. It's impossible for him to break the seal for at least 100 years. Even if another demon race expert sneaks into our sect, it's impossible for him to destroy the seal array." To put it bluntly, Chu Tianxing meant that the Sky Pillar sect would be safe from now on for at least 100 years. They didn't have to worry about the unparalleled demon breaking the seal, nor did they have to worry about the demon race experts destroying the seal. The several elders all showed expressions of relief, revealing smiles on their faces as they discussed in low voices. Of course, the elders looked at Ji Tianxing with eyes filled with gratification and admiration. Everyone knew that Ji Tianxing had made a great contribution to the sect this time. His future was bound to be boundless. At this time, Chu Tianxing continued, "Of course, our sect is safe for the time being. However, we need everyone to speed up the investigation and decipher the Dragon Mountain tomb. In addition, the elders in charge of guarding the sect must also step up their defenses. We must not let the demon race invade again. Humph. Those damned demon race remnants won't give up on destroying our Sky Pillar sect. Sooner or later, our sect will catch them all in one fell swoop and annihilate them all." The elders in the hall all cupped their hands to express their obedience. Then, Chu Tianxing looked at Ji Tianxing with a burning gaze and said in a solemn tone, "In addition to this matter, I want to announce a second matter today. This time, Ji Tianxing has successfully reactivated the 9 dragons trapping demon great array and made a great contribution to our sect. This merit should be heavily rewarded. Today, I announce that Ji Tianxing will be promoted to the inner sect and accepted into the sect as my 3rd personal disciple. In 3 days, the apprenticeship ceremony will be held in this hall." The elders didn't expect that the second matter Chu Tianxing was going to announce was to accept Ji Tianxing as his personal disciple. A sect leader accepting a personal disciple was definitely a shocking and far-reaching matter. The elders all understood what this decision meant. Everyone revealed complicated expressions as they looked at Ji Tianxing, their eyes flashing with a burning light. Although 6 elders didn't have any objections to this matter, they were just surprised. There were also 3 elders who clearly had other thoughts and plans and didn't agree with this matter. Among them, a graceful and plump female elder had a complicated expression as she pondered. Chapter 227. This female elder was the 7th elder of the sky-bearing sect. She usually kept a low profile and rarely showed her face. Ji Tianxing was not familiar with the elders. He only knew the outer elder Chu Huaishan and the great elder Mu Yunhai. As for the 7th elder, he neither knew nor had seen her before. However, he could feel that the 7th elder's objection was not directed at him. She might have other considerations. After the 7th elder raised her opinion, Chu Tianxing did not immediately refute her. Instead, he said in a dignified tone, "Who else opposes this matter?" The other 2 elders looked at each other and stepped forward. They cupped their hands and bowed. "Sect Master, this matter is of great importance. Please reconsider." "Sect Master, please reconsider." Chu Tianxing nodded slightly. He glanced at the 3 elders and said in a solemn tone, "The 3 elders are right. As the sect master, I naturally can't accept a disciple so easily. However, I already had this plan. After careful consideration and discussion with the Grand Elder, I made this decision. Originally, the Grand Elder was fated with this child and wanted to accept him as his last disciple. The decision I just announced is the result of many discussions." Chu Tianxing's tone was resolute and had an unquestionable majesty. When the elders heard that the Grand Elder wanted to accept Ji Tianqing as his disciple, they were surprised and incredulous. This time, the three elders didn't say anything and silently retreated. Chu Tiansheng had already made it very clear that if he did not accept Ji Tianqing as his disciple, the Grand Elder would accept him as his last disciple. In this way, Ji Tianqing's seniority would be too high. He would be of the same generation as the sect master and the elders. This was not what they wanted to see. The elders were all secretly sizing up Ji Tianqing, silently guessing in their hearts. What exactly was so extraordinary about this kid? Why did the sect master and the Grand Elder think so highly of him? In addition to having a special bloodline and being able to open the 9 dragons trapping demon formation for the sect, did he have another identity? Or perhaps, he was a top genius whose aptitude was comparable to Yun Yao's. At this time, Chu Tiansheng said in a dignified tone, "Since there are no objections, then this matter is settled. Third Elder, prepare for the apprenticeship ceremony in 3 days." Next, Chu Tiansheng gave orders to several elders to deal with some matters in the sect. After the meeting ended, all the elders left the main hall. Chu Tiansheng also left. Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao left the main hall together and strolled on the forest path at the top of the Red Cloud Peak. Yun Yao saw that he looked calm and seemed to be thinking about something. She asked, "Junior brother Tianqing, congratulations. You will soon become the personal disciple of the sect leader. This is an honor that many disciples dream of. Why do you seem so unhappy?" Ji Tianqing smiled and explained, "Eldest senior sister, if it were any other disciple, they would definitely be ecstatic and overjoyed. However, I am a little surprised. I didn't expect the sect leader to give me this as a reward." Yun Yao was not surprised. In fact, she had already guessed it. Back then, when the sect leader brought Ji Ling to the restart array, he had said that if Ji Ling could restart the array, he would accept him as his personal disciple after he entered the inner sect. Now, not only had Ji Tianqing successfully activated the 9 dragons demon trapping array, but his martial talent and moral character far surpassed Ji Ling's. Of course, he would become the sect leader's personal disciple. Thinking of this, Yun Yao revealed a rare faint smile. She looked sideways at him and said, "You are about to become my junior brother. Other than being surprised, aren't you happy?" Ji Tianqing turned to look at her beautiful face. When he saw her smile, he could not help but be a little absent-minded. "Of course I am happy. However, I understand that the identity of the sect leader's personal disciple is too important and sensitive. I will definitely be watched by many people." He retracted his gaze and stared at the mountain peak in front of him. He laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "I don't have powerful strength, nor do I have martial talent like you, eldest senior sister." When the sect leader announced the news just now, there were already elders who objected. "After the news spreads, who knows how many disciples will criticize me behind my back. I reckon that they will all think that I was just lucky and relied on my special bloodline to activate the array and directly enter the inner sect and become the sect leader's personal disciple." Yun Yao stopped and stared at him. She said in a serious tone, "Junior brother Tianqing, if the gazes and criticisms of others give you pressure, you might as well try to turn the pressure into motivation. When you are outstanding enough and prove yourself time and time again, all the criticism will disappear and turn into admiration and reverence." As the chief disciple of the Sky Pillar sect, the successor of the sect leader, and the #1 genius of the heavenly stellar region, she was most qualified to say these words. This was because back then, she had rapidly risen to become a top genius amidst the criticism of everyone and won tens of thousands of glory. Now, whether it was the Sky Pillar sect or the various large sects of the ancient star realm, when her name was mentioned, everyone would praise and respect her from the bottom of their hearts. Ji Tianqing nodded heavily. He cupped his hands and bowed to Yun Yao. He said with a smile, "Thank you for your guidance, eldest senior sister. I will remember your words." Yun Yao nodded slightly. A smile flashed across her clear eyes. The two continued to walk side by side on the forest path. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He asked doubtfully, "Eldest senior sister, I have a question that I want to ask." Just now in the main hall, the sect leader said that he would accept me as his third personal disciple. Could it be that besides you and me, the sect leader has accepted someone else as a disciple? But why have I never heard of this disciple? Yunyao nodded and said with a calm expression, "Besides you and me, the sect leader does have another personal disciple who was accepted into the sect 2 years ago. This junior brother is called Yen Er. He is a 10-year-old boy and the crown prince of the southern wasteland fire tribe." Ji Tianqing immediately revealed a look of surprise. He asked with some doubt, "Southern wasteland fire tribe? Crown prince?" Yunyao nodded slightly and explained patiently, "The Tianshan region is one of the 9 southern regions of the continent. The southern wasteland refers to the 2 southernmost regions of the continent. The fire tribe is a rare foreign race. They are very similar to the human race. However, the fire tribe is born with the ability to control fire. Our sect has a relationship with the fire tribe hundreds of years ago. We have been friends for generations and have had many dealings with them. This generation's fire emperor is a close friend of the sect leader. Yen Er is the crown prince of the fire tribe. He was born a martial arts genius and inherited the talent of the fire emperor and fire empress. He has 2 bloodlines, the extreme cold Yin fire and the crimson yang purple fire. Originally, Yen Er was a once-in-a-century genius and the pride of the fire tribe. But 3 years ago, he awakened a special constitution and obtained the wildfire treasured body. Chapter 228. Ji Tianqing listened to Yunyao's story about the fire clan's crown prince with great interest. Ordinary people with a special bloodline could become a martial arts genius and reach a height that ordinary people could not reach. People with 2 special bloodlines were definitely very rare. They were rare martial arts geniuses that only appeared once in 100 years. Their future was immeasurable. Yen Er was the fire clan's crown prince and had a pair of strong parents. He was blessed by the heavens. He actually inherited the fire emperor and fire empress's bloodline. This was definitely a great blessing. Not only that, he also awakened the wildfire treasured body and had a special physique. In Ji Tianqing's opinion, since Yen had 2 special bloodlines and a special physique, he would definitely become a monstrous genius. But he did not expect that the wildfire treasured body would cause Yen Er to suffer pain and torture. Senior sister, Yen has 2 special bloodlines and a wildfire treasured body. Isn't he going to reach a higher level and become a top genius? Yunyao shook her head gently and sighed with a solemn expression. If junior brother Yen Er only had 2 bloodlines, he would be a top genius. If he didn't have 2 special bloodlines and only had the wildfire treasured body, he could also become a top genius. It's a pity that he has 2 special bloodlines and the wildfire treasured body. This is a disaster. The fire emperor's red sun purple fire is of the yang attribute. The fire empress's extreme cold Yin fire is of the yin attribute. Junior brother Yen has 2 special bloodlines. Yin and yang are in harmony. He won't feel any discomfort and his strength will increase rapidly. But the wildfire treasured body is of the extreme yang attribute. It can devour all kinds of fire energy in the world and turn them into wildfire. It is the most powerful and domineering. Junior brother Yen Er's 2 special bloodlines clashed violently with the wildfire treasured body, causing his strength to go out of control. That's why junior brother Yen Er's strength dropped and he suffered pain and torture. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing nodded and said with pity and sympathy, "I see. What a pity." Yunyao continued, 3 years ago, after junior brother Yen Er's wildfire treasured body awakened, he has been suffering pain and torture. As his strength increased day by day, the pain he suffered also increased. The fire emperor and fire empress tried everything but could not solve this problem. 2 years ago, the Fire Emperor sent Yen to our sect and asked the sect leader for help. From then on, junior brother Yen stayed in our sect. The sect leader also accepted him as a personal disciple and took good care of him. In the past year, junior martial brother Yen's situation has gotten worse and worse. He could only sleep in the secret room and rely on the array formation set up by sect master to suppress the wildfire in his body. Ji Tianqing finally understood the whole story. He nodded and said, "No wonder I have never heard of him." Then, he asked Yun Yao a few more questions. The two of them chatted for a while and only parted when the sun was setting. When Ji Tianqing returned to the storm courtyard, he saw several disciples gathered together and discussing something. Although he was far away, he could vaguely hear the words "activate the formation" and "enter the inner sect." He immediately realized that the news must have spread, and several disciples must be talking about him. Sure enough, when those disciples saw him, they immediately shut their mouths. If it was in the past, the disciples would look at him strangely and quietly discuss and envy him behind his back. However, after the Dragon Mountain tournament, the disciples of the Storm Courtyard were convinced of his abilities and had the intention to build a good relationship with him. Now, he had made great contributions to the sect and was directly promoted to the inner sect by the sect leader. He was even accepted as a personal disciple. With such a glorious and illustrious identity, everyone could only envy him. They didn't even dare to have jealousy in their hearts. The disciples all revealed smiles and didn't feel embarrassed. They all cupped their hands and greeted him. Senior Martial Brother Ji. Senior Martial Brother Ji is well. Greetings, Senior Martial Brother Ji. After greeting him, the disciples all rushed over and surrounded Ji Tianqing. Everyone's faces were full of admiration and envy. They all asked him what was going on. Senior Martial Brother Ji, we just heard that the sect leader announced today that he wants to promote you to the inner sect. Senior Martial Brother Ji, the sect leader wants to accept you as a personal disciple. In the future, you'll be one of the most respected disciples in the sect. You won't ignore us, right? He, Senior Martial Brother Ji, when you become the sect leader's personal disciple, you'll be able to go everywhere together with eldest Senior Martial Sister. You'll make everyone envious. Senior Martial Brother Ji, can you tell us what's going on with that great array? The disciples were all full of curiosity and doubt. They looked at him eagerly, waiting to hear him talk about the twists and turns of the story. Ji Tianqing nodded to the crowd and faintly smiled. That's right. In 3 days, after the apprenticeship ceremony, I'll be able to enter the inner sect. Junior Martial Brothers, you must also work hard in your cultivation and strive to pass the inner sect exam in 3 months. I'll be waiting for you in the inner sect. His tone was calm and his expression was indifferent as he chatted with the disciples. Although he was now the sect leader's favorite and was envied by all the disciples, he was still as calm as ever. There wasn't the slightest trace of pride or arrogance on his body. The disciples not only envied his good fortune, but also admired his determination and self-restraint. Only a genius martial artist who was neither arrogant nor impatient, who was indifferent to favor or disgrace, could go further and achieve more astonishing achievements. Ji Tianqing chatted with the disciples for a while. He didn't mention the 9 dragons trapping demon array, but only encouraged them. Other than that, he didn't mention a word about the secrets of the sect. It wasn't that he didn't trust the disciples, but that there was no need to tell the disciples that information. When the disciples entered the inner sect and had enough strength and important status, they would naturally be qualified to know those things. After they talked for a while, Ji Tianqing cupped his fists and said goodbye, returning to his room. The disciples looked at his back as he left. They still gathered together and discussed with emotion for a while. Mo's expression was complicated as he sighed with emotion. Ah, fate is really wonderful. In just 3 months, Senior Martial Brother Ji has undergone such a tortuous change. It's really unbelievable. Shi Jingqing also nodded in agreement. Yes, when we entered the Wind Cloud Academy together, Senior Marshal Brother G's strength was lower than ours. At that time, not only was he framed and punished to sweep the floor, he was also locked in the dark wind cave to reflect. Ordinary people can't imagine the twists and turns and difficulties. Now, not only has he reached the metaphysic realm and won the Dragon Mountain tournament, but he has also made great contributions to the sect. He entered the inner sect in advance and became the sect leader's personal disciple. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. Another disciple said in agreement. So, as the old saying goes, gold will always shine. Even when Senior Marshal Brother G encountered difficulties, he didn't give up. He still practiced hard and performed well. That's why he has today's opportunity. Chapter 229. For the next 3 days, the Sky Pillar sect was filled with a joyous atmosphere. After the news spread, everyone in the sect knew that there were 2 happy events in the Sky Pillar sect. The first was that the huge hidden danger that had been threatening the Sky Pillar sect for a long time had finally been contained. For at least 100 years, the Sky Pillar sect would be impregnable and safe. As for the second thing, the sect master wanted to accept outer sect disciple Ji Tianqing as his personal disciple and directly promote him to the inner sect. It hadn't been long since the Dragon Mountain tournament. The outer sect disciples had all heard of Ji Tianqing's name and knew of his deeds. In the eyes of many outer sect disciples, Ji Tianqing's performance in the Dragon Mountain tournament was outstanding. He was actually able to defeat a genius disciple of the Tianjian sect. It was indeed very inconceivable. However, even if he was a martial arts genius, he shouldn't be so valued by the sect master and be accepted as a personal disciple, right? While many outer sect disciples were envious and jealous of him, they also felt deeply puzzled about this. Later, another piece of news spread in the sect. It was said that not only was Ji Tianqing's martial arts talent outstanding, but he had also opened some great formation and made a great contribution to the sect. It was because of this that he received such shocking treatment. After many disciples heard this news, they came to a sudden realization. Compared to the envy and amazement of the outer sect disciples, the feelings of the inner sect disciples were a bit complicated. There weren't many inner sect disciples in the Sky Pillar sect, but all of them were martial arts geniuses. Before this, many people didn't know Ji Tianqing and didn't pay attention to him. Now that he had suddenly appeared, he didn't need to go through the inner sect assessment and was about to enter the inner sect out of thin air and become the sect master's personal disciple. This made many inner sect disciples feel uneasy. They were shocked and jealous, and they secretly discussed and slandered him. All kinds of speculations about his deep enmity were also spread among the inner sect disciples. Especially the elite geniuses of the inner sect. They were either disciples of some elders or dreamed of becoming the sect master's disciple. These disciples had been in the Sky Pillar sect for many years and had lofty ambitions and revenge in their hearts, but they had never been able to fulfill their wishes. Now, Ji Tianqing had emerged into the world, and his status had risen rapidly, causing his future to be so vast that it surpassed all of them. How could they not be jealous? How could they not feel frustrated and angry? Among the palaces of the inner sect, there was a quiet and secluded courtyard called the Impermanence Courtyard. There was a towering tree in the courtyard. Under the tree, there was a stone table and 4 stone stools. Dressed in a white robe, Bai Wuchen was sitting on a stone bench. His face was gloomy as he stared at the stone table. His eyes were burning with anger. Sitting opposite him was Hao Meng, who was tall and sturdy like an iron tower. Hao Meng took a sip of tea from his teacup. He shook his head when he saw Bai Wuchen maintaining the same posture for a long time, still fuming with anger. "Senior brother Bai, please calm down." Bai Wuchen clenched his fists and frowned. He said in a low voice, "That kid has only been in the sect for 3 months. How could he have climbed so fast? Hao Meng, tell me, in our sect's nearly 100 years of history, which disciple was like him, entering the inner sect within 3 months and even becoming the sect leader's disciple. Hao Meng frowned and thought for a moment. He nodded and said, I don't think there is such a precedent. Ji Tianqing's opportunity is too amazing. However, this matter is a foregone conclusion. The sect leader has already announced it in front of everyone. All the elders have no objections. What can you do even if you are dissatisfied? Bai Wuqian remained silent, but his mind was filled with thoughts. He was analyzing the aftermath of this incident and the possible situations that might arise in the future. Hao Meng took a big gulp of tea and put the teacup down. He said calmly, Senior brother Bai, you don't have to be so angry, do you? Everyone has their own fate. Some things are predestined. You should take it easy. Although I don't like that kid Ji Tianqing, I don't like him. He's like a taciturn gourd. Too boring. But he's not an annoying guy. Senior brother Bai, how did he offend you? Why are you the angriest after hearing the news? Bai Wuqian frowned and said in a low voice, he didn't offend me, but he blocked my path. His appearance ruined my plan. What plan? Hao Meng widened his eyes and looked at him in confusion. Bai Wuqian glanced at him and waved his hand. He said angrily, you won't understand even if I tell you. Sigh, if only all the disciples in the sect could be like you, junior brother Hao. How good would it be to live a carefree life? Hao Meng widened his eyes and said with some dissatisfaction, who's carefree? I'm carefree and have no desires. That's why I'm carefree. Besides, senior brother Bai, do you really think I don't know what you're thinking? Hao Meng curled his lips and whispered in a strange tone, don't you want to get close to senior sister? But why don't you think about what kind of person she is and what kind of personality she has? With senior sister's talent and background, why would she stay in the small Tianjin region in the future? She wholeheartedly cultivates martial arts. She's a pure fairy. Why would she fall in love with you? Do you feel suffocated because eldest senior sister is close to Ji Tian, and both of them will become the head disciple in the future and can go out as a couple more justifiably? Bai Wuqian was stunned for a moment. His expression became a little strange as he stared at Hao Meng and observed him carefully. After a while, he showed a wry smile and said self-deprecatingly, I've long found that junior brother Hao looks reckless, but in fact, you're very thoughtful. You know everything. It seems that what you said just now really pierced my heart. Hao Meng grinned silently and said in a low voice, and I also know that getting close to senior sister is only one of your plans. You also want to become the chief disciple and compete for the position. Hearing this, Bai Wuqian's expression suddenly changed. He said in a dignified tone, Junior brother Hao, you can't talk nonsense. Hao Meng rolled his eyes at him and said indifferently, there are only 2 of us in the dustless yard. What can I say? Besides, you're not the only one who wants to compete for the position of chief. The other elite disciples also have the same idea. Except for me who doesn't have that ambition, those guys can still get along with me peacefully. But you guys are all competitors. When have you ever been peaceful and harmonious? Bai Wuqian frowned and didn't speak. After all, what Hao Meng said was true. In the inner sect, this was no secret. Many disciples knew about it. The sect also knew about the competition between the elite disciples, but they didn't intervene. Instead, they acquiesced. After all, without competition, there would be no motivation to work hard, and a sect would lose its vitality. The reason why the Sky Pillar sect could dominate the Tianjin region for thousands of years and prosper for so long was that it had a complete and mature competition system that could continuously cultivate many geniuses and powerhouses. Several elite disciples in the inner sect all had the opportunity to compete for the position of chief and become the next chief. Chapter 230. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Ji Tianqing ended his 3-day seclusion and walked out of the secret room. After 3 days of bitter cultivation, he had tempered another acupoint and his strength had increased a bit. On the table in the room was a set of white robes that Han Qiusheng had sent over in advance. Ji Tianqing washed up and changed into a set of white robes before walking out of the room and rushing towards the crimson firmament peak. Today was the day of the apprenticeship ceremony. From today onwards, he was an inner disciple and also the sect master's personal disciple. Ji Tianqing wore a set of white robes and walked out of the Tempest courtyard in a refreshed manner, causing the other disciples to be filled with envy. They were all hot-blooded youths. Who didn't yearn for a set of white robes, a 3-foot-tall peak, and a scene of traveling the world with a sword? Moreover, the azure robes of the Sky Pillar sect's outer disciples were somewhat ordinary and ugly. Only by wearing a set of white robes would one appear valiant and elegant, possessing the righteous aura of a disciple of a famous sect. Ji Tianqing walked down the Sky Pillar peak and rushed towards the crimson firmament peak. Along the way, countless outer disciples frequently glanced at him, staring at him as he walked far away. They were still discussing him endlessly. Everyone knew that today was the day of the apprenticeship ceremony and Ji Tianqing was about to soar into the sky. After reaching the crimson firmament peak, Ji Tianqing had just arrived at the Sky Pillar Hall when he was pulled away by the third elder. The third elder was a thin and benevolent old man with a stooped body. He was usually in charge of the sect's rituals, ceremonies, and other trivial matters. He brought Ji Tianqing to the side hall, and taught him the etiquette and rules of the apprenticeship ceremony, as well as the process of the apprenticeship ceremony. Although today's apprenticeship ceremony wasn't grand, it was very solemn and solemn. Everything had to be done according to the rules and etiquette. Ji Tianqing earnestly listened to the third elder's teachings and silently memorized many complicated matters. With his intelligence and memory, it wasn't difficult to remember these trivial matters. After an hour, the ceremony was about to begin. The third elder brought him into the Sky Pillar Hall. More than 30 people had already gathered in the hall. They were standing in 2 rows and talking in low voices. Ji Tianqing's gaze swept across the hall, and he recognized many people. There were more than 30 people present. Not only were there the 9 elders, but there was also the Grand Elder Xiang Wuji, a dozen higher-ranked deacons, and 5 elite disciples. The Sky Pillar sect originally had 6 elite disciples. One of them was Yan who wasn't present today. The 5 elite disciples included Yun Yao, Bai Wuchen, Hao Meng, and 2 other handsome young men. Ji Tianqing was no stranger to Bai Wuchen and Hao Meng, but he had never seen the 2 young men before. He couldn't help but pay more attention to them. The 2 young men were also very curious and concerned about him, silently observing him. However, due to the presence of the elders and deacons, the 2 young men did not greet Ji Tianqing, nor did they speak. However, Ji Tianqing could vaguely feel that the 2 young men were calm and indifferent on the surface, but in fact, they harbored hostility toward him. He had never met them before, and there was no enmity between them. However, they harbored hostility toward him. He wasn't surprised or puzzled. As early as 3 days ago, when Chu Tianxing announced that he wanted to accept him as a disciple, he had already expected this result. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was now the target of public criticism. However, Ji Tianqing didn't care about other people's gazes and opinions. He remembered what Yun Yao had said that day and would act according to it. Not long after, Sect Master Chu Tianxing entered the hall. The people who were participating in the apprenticeship ceremony had finally arrived. When the time came, the third elder announced the official start of the apprenticeship ceremony. In the north of the Sky Pillar Hall, a portrait of the mountain-splitting ancestor was carved on the wall. On both sides of the portrait were 2 lines of vigorous and powerful words. On the left was, supporting the heavens and splitting the mountains, the stars of the heavens protect me and prosper for all eternity. On the right was, dominating the ancient realm, the endless mountains and rivers formed their own hegemony for all eternity. There were also 4 domineering words on the horizontal lintel, conquering all eternity. An altar had already been set up below the portrait of the mountain-splitting ancestor. On the altar were gemstones, lamps, bronze incense burners, and the tablets of the sect masters. The third elder stood beside the altar with a solemn expression. His voice was as loud as a bell as he gave a long speech. These long speeches were mainly to praise the great achievements of the mountain-splitting ancestor, as well as the achievements of the previous sect masters. After the speech, the third elder loudly announced that everyone would pay their respects to the ancestor and the previous sect masters. Everyone in the hall had already lined up neatly. Chu Tianxing and Xiang Wuji stood at the front. The 9 elders stood behind them, followed by the deacons and elite disciples. Everyone's expressions were solemn as they knelt and paid their respects to the ancestor's statue. They paid their respects to the ancestor and the previous sect masters. When this was over, the third elder held up a book and read out a long speech. The meaning of these words was that the previous sect masters had to be cautious and conscientious, and the disciples had to cultivate diligently in order for the sect to flourish. Thus, the current sect master wanted to recruit new talents for the sky-bearing sect and recruit a disciple to be his personal disciple. Ji Tianqing followed the rules of the ceremony. He gave a speech step by step, bowed, and kowtowed to the ancestor. This solemn and grand apprenticeship ceremony lasted for an entire 2 hours. It wasn't until Ji Tianqing bowed to Chu Tianxing and offered him tea that the third elder loudly announced that the ceremony was complete. From this moment on, Ji Tianxing was sect master Chu Tianxing's personal disciple. The elders and deacons all cupped their hands and congratulated Chu Tianxing. Chu Tianxing smiled and nodded in response to everyone's congratulations. Of course, he didn't forget to take out a black jade thumb ring from his interspatial ring and give it to Ji Tianxing. Disciple Tianxing, this is a gift from Master to you. I hope that you will diligently cultivate in the future and strive hard. Don't lose face for Master. Ji Tianxing took the black jade thumb ring and solemnly accepted it. He bowed and thanked, Sect Master, please rest assured. This disciple will definitely not disappoint Master. Chu Tianxing smiled and nodded, revealing a gratified expression. Following that, the first elder also took out a gift and gave it to Ji Tianxing in front of everyone, congratulating him. The first elder had an extremely good impression of Ji Tianxing, so this gift was also priceless. There were actually 10 top-grade profound level pills and 10 spirit stones. With the first elder taking the lead, the second elder, the third elder, and the others also took out the gifts they had prepared and took turns to give them to Ji Tianxing. The gifts given by the elders were naturally extraordinary. They were all very precious treasures. This was also the usual practice of the Sky Pillar sect. It was a joyous occasion for the sect master to accept a personal disciple. Of course, the elders had to express their congratulations and give some gifts and resources to express their congratulations and encouragement. Not only that, even a few deacons who were familiar with Ji Tianxing also gave him congratulatory gifts. Ji Tianxing accepted the gifts from everyone and bowed with a smile to express his gratitude. Yun Yao saw his face full of smiles as he happily accepted the gifts, and a smile flashed in her eyes. Chapter 231. The gifts from the elders and deacons were all put into Ji Tianxing's spatial ring. In the next year, he didn't have to worry about cultivation resources. Most of the gifts given by the elders and deacons were pills and materials, as well as a small number of spirit stones. Ji Tianxing remembered all of these clearly and could calculate the approximate amount and value. Only the gift that sect leader Chu Tianxing gave him was stored in the black jade ring. He didn't know what kind of treasure it was. There were many people in the hall, and Ji Tianxing couldn't check the things in the ring in public. But he could guess that the gift that sect leader Chu Tianxing personally gave him must be very valuable, and definitely surpassed the gifts given by the elders. Unknowingly, a quarter of an hour passed. The elders and deacons all gave their gifts, and it was the turn of the elite disciples. Interestingly, Other than Yun Yao congratulating Ji Tianqing and giving him a gift, the other disciples didn't say anything. Bai Wuchen, Hao Meng, and the two young elite disciples only cupped their hands towards Ji Tianqing and congratulated him verbally. When this scene landed in the eyes of the sect leader and the elders, everyone immediately understood the attitude of the elite disciples. They were obviously a little repulsed by Ji Tianqing, this new noble. But this was also understandable. The elders and deacons present didn't say anything and pretended not to see anything. It looked like the apprenticeship ceremony was about to end. At this moment, the disciple guarding the entrance of the hall suddenly walked into the hall and reported loudly, reporting to sect leader, the Heart Moon sect's great elder requests an audience. When everyone in the hall heard the messenger disciple's report, they immediately quietened down. Chu Tianqing seemed to have expected that the Heart Moon sect's elder would come. He nodded slightly and said, "Please." The messenger disciple turned and walked out of the hall to the entrance of the hall to pass on the order. A moment later, a graceful woman wearing a purple robe walked into the hall. She was the Heart Moon sect's elder, Xian Xian's aunt, and Shulan's master. Arriving at the main hall, she bowed to Chu Tianqing and said in a gentle voice, "Heart Moon sect's great elder, Junyi, greets sect leader Chu. I heard that today is the celebration of sect leader Chu accepting a personal disciple. Junyi is here to congratulate sect leader Chu." Chu Tianqing nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Elder Junyi is considerate." The Sky-bearing sect and the Heart Moon sect had been on good terms for generations, and the two sects were allies. Junyi had entered the Sky-bearing sect many times before, so the elders present were not unfamiliar with her. After everyone exchanged a few pleasantries, Junyi got down to business. She cupped her hands and bowed. With a solemn expression, she said, "Sect leader Chu, Junyi's visit today is mainly to apologize to sect leader Chu. Previously, Junyi sent her disciple, Shulan, to deliver medicine to your sect. Who would have thought that she would be used by the Devil Princess? The Devil Princess possessed Shulan's body and sneaked into your sect. She almost caused a disaster." After hearing about this matter, Junyi and our sect leader felt deeply guilty. Therefore, Junyi specially came to apologize to sect leader Chu in person. Chu Tianqing nodded. With a calm expression, he said, "Elder Junyi is considerate. Send my regards to your sect leader. Regarding the matter of Shulan being possessed by the Devil Princess, you can't blame your sect's disciple. You can only blame the Devil Princess for being treacherous and cunning." Fortunately, this sect leader detected the abnormality in time and resolved the disaster. "Elder Junyi, please don't blame yourself. In the future, our sect and your sect should be more vigilant and guard against the Devil Princess." Junyi will definitely pass on sect leader Chu's words. Junyi bowed and continued, "Junyi came to visit. The second thing is to take away the body of our sect's disciple, Shulan. This disciple usually respected her master and was diligent. She was also Junyi's proud disciple. It's a pity that she suffered such a disaster and lost her life. It could be considered that she deserved this disaster. Junyi is ashamed of this disciple. I only want to bring her body back to our sect and bury her in peace." Towards her request, Chu Tianqing naturally nodded and agreed. "Elder Junyi is so considerate of your disciple. You are really benevolent. That Shulan's body will be temporarily placed in the secret room by Xian Xian. Later, Elder Junyi can go and find Xian Xian to discuss this matter. Thank you, sect leader Chu, for fulfilling my wish." Junyi cupped her hands again and said with a calm expression, "Junyi came today for the third thing to congratulate sect leader Chu on your great joy. When our sect leader heard the news, he specially ordered Junyi to come and congratulate you and present a small gift. I hope sect leader Chu will kindly accept it." After speaking, Junyi took out a spiritual jade ring and presented it to Chu Tianqing. The gift given by the Heart Moon sect's elder was naturally priceless and very precious. Chu Tianxing didn't look at the things in the ring. He directly accepted the spiritual jade ring and said with a smile, "Thank you for your sect leader's gift. This sect leader will definitely come and thank you." Junyi and Ji Tianxing exchanged some pleasantries. Then, she took out 2 small white jade bottles and 10 dazzling spiritual stones and gave them to Ji Tianxing. "Congratulations, martial nephew, for finding a good teacher. From now on, you will have a bright future." Ji Tianxing was a little surprised. He didn't expect that Junyi would come to visit Chu Tianxing and even prepare a gift for him. He hurriedly accepted the jade bottle and spiritual stones that contained the elixirs. He smiled and bowed to Junyi to thank her. After he accepted the gift, Junyi then bowed to Chu Tianxing and bid farewell. "Junyi's mission for this trip has been completed. But before I bid farewell, Junyi still has to ask sect leader Chu on behalf of our sect leader. The 8th sect meeting in 10 days will be held at Stellar Peak as usual. May I ask if sect leader Chu will attend at that time?" Chu Tianxing frowned slightly and thought for a moment. Then, he smiled and nodded. "At that time, if I don't attend personally, I will definitely send someone to represent me." Junyi nodded and cupped her hands. Junyi will definitely pass on sect leader Chu's words. "Goodbye. Take care, Elder Junyi." Chu Tianxing stood up and cupped his hands. He watched Junyi turn and leave the hall. Not long after, the apprenticeship ceremony was announced to end. All the elders, deacons, and elite disciples left the towering sky hall one after another. Chu Tianxing said a few words to Ji Tianxing before he also walked out of the hall. Only Ji Tianxing and Xiang Wuji were left in the hall. Xiang Wuji was looking at him with a smile. There was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Ji Tianxing saw his strange expression and asked with a smile, "Senior Xiang, do you have any advice for this disciple?" Xiang Wuji grinned and said in a mocking tone, "Kid, everyone gave you a gift, but I didn't express anything. Are you very disappointed?" Ji Tianxing was startled for a moment. He smiled and said, I dare not. Senior Xiang has already taken great care of this disciple. How could this disciple dare to ask for more? Humph. Hypocrite." Xiang Wuji rolled his eyes at him. Chapter 232. Ji Tianxing followed Xiang Wuji to the Grand Peace Palace. He had thought that Xiang Wuji would give him some precious spirit pills and spirit fruits, or teach him some secret arts. Unexpectedly, Xiang Wuji didn't give him anything. Instead, he asked for the little ice fox and the little black dragon. Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed his intention, so he gave Qian Yu and the black dragon sword to him. Xiang Wuji told him to wait in the main hall, then took Qian Yu and the black dragon sword into the secret room. Ji Tianxing waited patiently in the main hall. He also checked the treasures in the space ring and the gifts he had received today. He took out the black jade ring that sect leader Chu Tianxing had given him. After studying it for a while, he opened the black jade ring and saw the treasures in the ring. There were a total of 20 spirit stones shining with multicolored light, and more than a dozen small white jade bottles, which contained all kinds of spirit pills for cultivation and healing. In addition, there were several secret arts in the black jade ring, all of which were black level upper class arts. There were a total of 4 secret arts. One was an inner strength mental cultivation method, one was a sword Dao secret art, one was a Qigong body art, and one was a body refining secret art. Any cultivation method was priceless. The spirit stones and spirit dawn in the jade bottles were also very valuable. They were very precious treasures. Ji Tianxing roughly estimated that this gift from sect leader Chu Tianxing couldn't be bought even with hundreds of millions of taels of silver in the mortal world. After all, the world of martial arts was different from the mortal kingdoms. The exchanges between martial artists were all done by bartering or using medicinal pills and spirit stones as currency to conduct transactions. Gold and silver could only be used in the mortal kingdoms. Ji Tianqing put all the treasures in the black jade ring into the space ring. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile as he thought to himself, Headmaster's gift is indeed extraordinary. He is also very thoughtful. He has basically prepared everything I need. It's a pity that I need to practice the sword Dao for the inner strength mental cultivation method, the flying star sword technique for the sword Dao cultivation method, and the shadowless steps for the Qinggong secret art. I can't even use the body refinement secret technique that the sect master gave me. The Dao of the sword heart is the most miraculous body refinement secret technique. Ever since he started cultivating the way of the sword heart, he had first condensed the sword embryo, then continuously refined his sword veins and aperture points, causing his body's toughness and strength to far surpass that of other warriors in the same realm. As a result, he couldn't use the 4 cultivation methods that sect master Chu Tianxing had given him. It was a pity. An hour later, Ji Tianqing checked all the treasures in the interspatial ring. He now had more than 100 spirit stones, more than 300 profound level high-grade spirit pills, and more than a dozen sets of alchemy in artifact forging materials. These cultivation resources were enough for him to use for the next year. Ji Tianqing waited patiently for another 2 hours before Xiang Wuji finally walked out of the secret room and came to the main hall. Xiang Wuji's face was calm. There was nothing wrong with him, but there was a hint of tiredness in his eyes. He calmly said to Ji Tianqing, "Kid, I'm a little tired. I'm going to rest first. Wait another hour, then you can go to the secret room and leave with those 2 little fellows." Ji Tianqing hurriedly bowed in thanks and respectfully sent Xiang Wuji off. An hour later, he entered the secret room, his heart filled with doubt. He saw Qian Yu and the little black dragon lying on the ground, seemingly asleep. Qian Yu and the little black dragon had clearly grown several times larger. Their bodies flickered with icy blue and blazing white light, exuding powerful yuan qi fluctuations. In the past, Qian Yu's body had been the size of a kitten, but now it was more than 3 meters long. The little black dragon had only been 3 meters long before, but now it was around 6 meters long. Its body had doubled. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing immediately understood what was going on and felt a little emotional. As expected, I guessed correctly. Senior Xiang's gift to me was to help Qian Yu and the little black dragon recover their strength. Although Senior Xiang has a strange temper and is strict and demanding, he has always taken good care of me. Not long after, Qian Yu and the little black dragon woke up. When they saw Ji Tianqing, they excitedly surrounded him. "Old Ji, I've finally recovered 30% of my strength. Old man Xiang is truly amazing. Old Ji, Senior Xiang has imparted his martial arts to us and helped me recover 30% of my martial arts." Ji Tianqing looked at Qian Yu and the little black dragon's excited expressions and couldn't help but smile. "The reason you were able to recover so quickly was all thanks to Senior Xiang's help. In the future, you must treat him with a little more respect, understood?" Qian Yu and the little black dragon nodded repeatedly, excitedly flying around the secret room. Now, with Ji Tianqing's status, he could bring Qian Yu and the little black dragon with him. There was no need to hide them any longer. Seeing that Qian Yu and the little black dragon were too large, Ji Tianqing had them shrink their bodies. The little black dragon's body flashed, and with a whoosh, it transformed into the black dragon sword. Qian Yu's body flashed with an icy blue light, and it immediately shrank to the size of a kitten. Its large clear eyes looked at Ji Tianqing with a pitiful expression as it begged, "Old Ji, can I not enter the brocade pouch? You are now the sect master's personal disciple. Even if you bring me around the Sky Pillar sect, you won't violate the sect's rules. I've been in the Sky Pillar sect for so long, but I still haven't seen the sect's scenery." Ji Tianqing nodded and smiled in agreement. He put the black dragon sword into his space ring and brought Qian Yu out of the secret room, leaving the Great Peace Palace. Qian Yu flapped its wings and flew beside him, curiously looking around and occasionally asking him a few questions. It had followed Ji Tianqing into the sect for so long, but this was the first time it had appeared in the open. Of course, it was excited and excited. It flew up and down, chattering non-stop all the way. After Ji Tianqing left the Great Peace Palace, he went to the Scarlet Firmament Peak and entered the palace where Sect Master Chu Tianqing lived. Before the apprenticeship ceremony ended, Chu Tianqing had told him that he had other matters to attend to. Ji Tianqing entered the palace and waited in the study for a moment before Chu Tianqing rushed over. "Greetings, Sect Master." Ji Tianqing quickly bowed. Chu Tianqing sat down in an armchair and slightly nodded. "Rise. Tianqing, the apprenticeship ceremony is over. Tomorrow, you will enter the inner sect and report to the inner sect elders. You will be leaving the outer sect storm courtyard, so of course you will have to change your residence. I've already arranged everything for you. A small courtyard will be vacated in the inner sect, and it will be renamed the Sky Conduct Court. From now on, the Tianqing courtyard will be your residence and also your private territory. Master has arranged a maid and 2 odd job disciples for you to take care of the Tianqing courtyard as well as your daily life." Chu Tianqing's expression was calm and his tone was kind. Ji Tianqing silently listened. After he finished speaking, he smiled and bowed in thanks. Chapter 233. Ji Tianqing had been in the sect for 3 months and was very familiar with the rules of the Sky Pillar sect. He knew that the treatment of ordinary inner sect disciples was basically the same as that of the Wind Cloud courtyard. Everyone had a room equipped with a secret room for cultivation. Only elite disciples were qualified to be rewarded with a courtyard by the sect. Under normal circumstances, the residence would be named after the disciple's name or nickname. The courtyard was the territory of the elite disciples. Not only were the facilities more complete, but it was also equipped with maids and odd job disciples. Ji Tianqing received the same treatment as by Wuchen, Hao Meng, and the 2 young elites. Of course, many of the deacons in the Sky Pillar sect also received the same treatment. Among everyone, the chief disciple, Yun Yao, received the best treatment and had the highest status. She didn't live in the inner sect, but on the Scarlet Firmament Peak. She had a palace that belonged to her called the White Cloud Hall. This level of treatment was equivalent to that of the 9 elders of the Sky Pillar sect. After bidding farewell to Chu Tianqing, Ji Tianqing left the Scarlet Firmament Peak and returned to the inner sect of the Sky Pillar Peak. Above the mountainside of the Sky Pillar Peak, including the peak, there were dozens of palaces and dozens of courtyards of various sizes. These were the territories of the inner sect. The elders and deacons of the inner sect, as well as the treasury of the inner sect, were all located on the peak of the mountain. Ji Tianqing shuttled through the palaces on the peak of the mountain. After searching for half an hour, he finally found the Tianqing courtyard that belonged to him. This small courtyard was close to the cliff of the back mountain. The courtyard walls were surrounded by towering trees, and the environment was very quiet and elegant. The small courtyard was square in shape, with an area of only 50 square meters and only a dozen rooms. However, although the courtyard was small, it was exquisite and elegant. It had everything that should be there. An ancient wooden plaque hung on the lintel of the gate with the words Tianqing Courtyard written on it. 2 odd job disciples and a maid had already cleaned the courtyard and rooms and were waiting for Ji Tianqing to move in. When Ji Tianqing entered the courtyard, the 2 odd job disciples and the young maid bowed in unison and respectfully called him Senior Marshal Brother Ji. Ji Tianqing smiled slightly and nodded, indicating that they shouldn't be so courteous. He walked around the courtyard and saw an ancient tree in the courtyard. Under the tree, there were stone benches and stone tables. There were also a few nursery plots in the corner of the courtyard that could be used to plant and cultivate medicinal herbs. The main hall, which faced the entrance, was spacious, bright, and magnificent. Next to it were the bedroom and study. The 2 rows of rooms on the left and right of the courtyard were also clean and cozy. In addition, in the row of houses on the left, there was a practice room and a pill room. Ji Tianqing looked around and was very satisfied with this small courtyard. After familiarizing himself with the environment of Tianqing courtyard, he went to his room to rest. Behind the bookshelf in his bedroom was a secret door that was connected to a secret room. The floor and walls of the secret room were engraved with array patterns and symbols. The array formation in this chamber was clearly of a much higher level than the one in the Tempest courtyard. Ji Tianqing could clearly sense that the concentration of heaven and earth spirit qi in this room was at least 3 to 5 times higher than the one in the Tempest courtyard. If he cultivated in this secret room, the results would naturally be better and his strength would increase faster. That night, Ji Tianqing rested in the Tianqing courtyard. His heart was full of self-satisfaction and was full of expectations for the future. The next morning, he followed Chu Tianqing's instructions and went to report to the inner sect elder. Although he was the head's disciple, head Chu Tianqing wouldn't instruct and teach him every day. Most of the time, he still had to be like other inner sect disciples and receive instruction from the inner sect deacons. Of course, he had more freedom than ordinary inner sect disciples. He could choose whether or not to listen to classes and study without being disturbed or punished. The inner sect elder's name was Yi Hong. He was a tall and thin old man with a dark face and a dignified and austere temperament. Ji Tianqing didn't have any contact with this elder Yi Hong before. They only met at the apprenticeship ceremony yesterday. At that time, Elder Yi Hong also gave him a congratulatory gift and said a few words of congratulations and encouragement. Ji Tianqing met Elder Yi Hong in the inner sect's main hall. Yi Hong's reaction was dull. He officially registered him and gave him the inner sect disciples' robes and monthly resources. Then, he turned and left the main hall. Then, the inner sect deacon Feng Xiao introduced him to the inner sect in detail, as well as the daily learning and training courses. There were about 100 inner sect disciples. All of them had the strength of the mystic comprehending realm. Whether it was the inner sect cultivation method or the martial arts method, it had already been fixed. These disciples didn't need to listen to classes every day. Most of the time, they cultivated in seclusion. Only when they encountered problems or bottlenecks, would they ask the deacons and elders for help. After Feng Xiao introduced the situation of the inner sect, he told Ji Tianqing one more thing in a serious tone. Ji Tianqing, you have received the head's favor and have been directly promoted to the inner sect. To you, this is both an honor and a burden. I have a piece of news to tell you. Unfortunately, next month is the inner sect's annual Heaven List tournament. Every year at this time, hundreds of inner sect disciples will participate in the tournament to compete for a place on the Heaven List. The Heaven List ranking is very important. It determines the amount of resources, status, and future martial arts prospects of the inner sect disciples. At this point, Feng Xiao didn't continue. As an inner sect deacon, he had kindly reminded Ji Tianqing. He had already done his duty. Ji Tianqing nodded calmly and thanked Feng Xiao. Then, he bid farewell to Feng Xiao and returned to Tianqing's courtyard. He had just returned to his room when a maidservant came in to report the news. Senior brother Ji, a senior brother named Bai is here to visit you. He is waiting for you at the gate. Ji Tianqing immediately raised his eyebrows and a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. A senior brother named Bai is here to visit me. Could it be Bai Wuchen? He left the room and walked to the gate. As expected, he saw Bai Wuchen standing outside with a cold and indifferent expression. What can I do for you, senior brother Bai? Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and asked calmly. Bai Wuchen turned around and stared at him. His lips curled into a playful smile. He, junior brother Ji, you are so proud of yourself these days. You are in high spirits. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing knew that he was not here with good intentions. He couldn't help but frown. Senior brother Bai, what do you mean? The corner of Bai Wuchen's mouth twitched, and he said in a playful tone, I'm here to give you a kind reminder. Don't get carried away. The inner sect is different from the outer sect. There are no weaklings in the inner sect. With your current strength, you are only at the bottom of the inner sect. Although you have made great contributions to the sect and were accepted as a disciple by the sect leader, you are lucky. That's just because you're lucky and the sect leader is kind enough to take care of you and reward you on purpose. Don't forget your status. Don't think that just because you are the sect leader's disciple, you can be compared to the elites in the sect. Chapter 234. Ji Tianqing had already expected Bai Wuqian to come with ill intentions. However, he did not expect Bai Wuqian to be so direct. He immediately frowned, and the corner of his mouth curled up into a sneer. It seems like senior brother Bai is very displeased and angry that I was accepted as a pro-disciple by the sect leader. What? Am I blocking senior brother Bai's path? Or did I steal senior brother Bai's position? Ji Tianqing looked askance at Bai Wuqian, his tone full of mockery. Bai Wuqian was infuriated, but he maintained a smirk on his face. You. What right do you have to block my path and steal my position? Ji Tianqing was not to be outdone. Since senior brother Bai is so confident and hostile towards me, why don't you pull me down from my position? If you don't have the ability to remove my position as the sect leader's disciple, then shut up and don't waste your breath on me. Since the day Bai Wuqian met Ji Tianqing, he had been looking down on Ji Tianqing with a condescending attitude. In his eyes, Ji Tianqing was just a nobody from a small country. He was not worth mentioning and did not deserve to be his opponent. In just a few short months, Ji Tianqing's status was on par with his. Moreover, Ji Tianqing dared to say such words in front of him without fear or respect. How could Bai Wuqian not fly into a rage out of humiliation? Good. Good. Junior brother Ji, you're really tough. You're really arrogant. Bai Wuqian was so angry that he laughed. His face was cold as he sneered. If that's the case, I'd like to see how long you can be tough. Next month is the annual Heaven Board tournament. As the sect leader's pro-disciple, if you can't even enter the top 30 on the Heaven Board, I'd like to see if you still have the face to stay in the inner court. At this point, he added in a mocking tone, oh right, I have to remind you that the weakest among the top 30 disciples on the Heaven leaderboard is at the 7th level of the mystic comprehending stage. You're only at Tongxian realm first tier. By then, not only will you embarrass yourself and be mocked by the other disciples, you'll also implicate the sect leader's reputation. Ji Tianqing looked at him coldly. His lips curled into a sneer, and he was about to retort. At this moment, the little ice fox, Thousand Moon, flew out of the courtyard and landed beside Ji Tianqing. Qian Yu flapped her wings and hovered in the air beside Ji Tianqing. He glared at Bai Wuqian and scolded him, you're such a joke. What does old Ji's cultivation level and ranking on the Heaven roll have to do with you? Our family's old Ji has always kept a low profile. Even if he has the strength, he would never flaunt it. He would never deliberately slander or provoke others. You're so annoying. You look like a decent person, but you're full of despicable and filthy thoughts. How dare you come to Tianqing's courtyard and make a scene? Who do you think you are? Qian Yu scolded him like a machine gun, stunning Bai Wuqian on the spot. He glared at Qian Yu with an ashen face and muttered subconsciously, what the hell is this? Qian Yu became even angrier. She scolded him fiercely, you're the damn thing. No, you're not a thing. You don't even know me, and you still have the nerve to call yourself an elite genius? You ignorant, blind bastard. Bai Wuqian was once again scolded by Qian Yu. He did not even have the chance to talk back. No matter how shrewd and well-mannered he was, he could not help but be so angry that his face turned ashen. His eyes were burning with rage. You damned fox. Aren't you just a demonic beast? How dare you scold me? You're courting death. Bai Wuqian cursed in a menacing tone. His face was full of murderous intent, and he was about to teach Qian Yu a lesson. Ji Tianqing immediately shouted, Bai Wuqian. This is my spiritual beast pet. If you dare lay a hand on it, I'll make you regret it. Bai Wuqian suddenly came to his senses and calmed down. He knew very well that if he came to Tianqing's courtyard and provoked Ji Tianqing, he would be punished by the faction if a fight broke out. When he was punished by the faction, not only would he be laughed at by the other two elite geniuses, but he would also be ridiculed by Ji Tianqing. Thinking of this, he had no choice but to calm down. He glared at Qian Yu and Ji Tianqing fiercely and growled, "Ji Tianqing, I'm not going to stoop to your level today. Just you wait." Qian Yu curled her lips in disdain and sneered mockingly, "Is there something wrong with your brain? You came to Tianqing's courtyard to provoke Ji Tianqing, and now you want to admit defeat? Do you have nothing better to do? Why are you asking for a slap in the face?" At this point, Qian Yu put on a compassionate expression and said in a pitying tone, "Ai. Look at your jealous and irritable face. You're so pitiful. Let me remind you, don't come to Tianqing's courtyard to look for trouble. Otherwise, you'll be so angry that your face will turn green and you'll turn into a green turtle, you little beast." Bai Wuqian's face was livid, and his eyes were filled with anger. He had never expected that not only Ji Tianqing would mock him, but even Ji Tianqing's spiritual beast pet would be so arrogant and dare to insult him to his face. This was something that had never happened before. Even the other two elite geniuses would not dare to insult him to his face. Bai Wuqian had always been a gloomy person and would not show his emotions easily. But now, he was enraged by Qian Yu. Qian Yu pointed at his face with her little paw and said sympathetically, "Look, your face is green, isn't it? Had his liver turned green as well? I told you so. Sigh. Xiao Bai, you're still young. Take care of yourself." Qian Yu put on a serious look as if she was educating the younger generation. Bai Wuqian's handsome face was contorted with anger, but he could not do anything about it. All he could do was growl coldly. "Ji Tianqing. I'll remember this." He knew that he was no match for Qian Yu in a verbal battle, and he could not vent his anger by attacking Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu. With that, he stormed out of Tianqing's courtyard in a huff. Qian Yu looked at Bai Wuqian's back with disdain and muttered, "What kind of bullshit elite genius is this? How dare he bully Ji Tianqing? Humph. The next time I see you, I'll curse your ancestors until they jump out of their coffins." Ji Tianqing tilted his head and looked at Qian Yu with a strange smile. "Qian Yu, where did you learn to insult people? Look at how angry Bai Wuqian is. I bet he'll vomit 3 buckets of blood when he gets back." "Ha ha ha." Qian Yu raised her head proudly and said, "I was born with the talent to insult people. No one can envy me." Chapter 235. Ji Tianqing teased Qian Yu for a bit before taking it back to his room. For the next 2 days, no one came to the Tianqing courtyard to disturb Ji Tianqing. He had been cultivating in seclusion in his secret room, using the spirit stones and spirit pills he had obtained to quickly temper his acupoints and increase his strength. Next month was the Heaven Roll tournament. He had to increase his strength as much as possible in order to obtain a good ranking in the tournament. Ji Tianqing was cultivating in seclusion. The little black dragon had turned into the black dragon sword and was obediently lying in the space ring. Only Qian Yu was wandering around the Tianqing courtyard, having a lot of fun every day. 2 days had passed, and it had already studied every corner of the Skyline Court. It was already bored. On the morning of the 3rd day, it flew around the Tianqing courtyard once before swaggering out of the gate and strolling outside. "Sigh, old Ji is cultivating in seclusion and the little black dragon isn't playing with me. I have to walk around by myself. The Sky Pillar sect is a treasure land with spirit veins. The world's spirit energy here is abundant and the scenery is beautiful. I haven't appreciated it yet." Qian Yu muttered as it flapped its little wings and flew into the sky, leaving the Tianqing courtyard. It flew past many courtyards and palaces, circling around the sky pillar sect and admiring the scenery of the mountain peaks. Wow, what a magnificent group of palaces! Hee, what rich world spirit energy! The mountain gate is also very spectacular. Yes, several mountain peaks join together to form a large array. How extravagant! Xian Yu flew around the sky pillar sect, looking left and right. From time to time, it would exclaim or comment. Unknowingly, it had flown out of the sky pillar sect and entered another mountain peak. About 2 hours later, it was flying over a mountain peak, admiring the lush towering trees and the waterfall that flowed down from the mountainside. After wandering around for a while, it stopped at a forest path not far from the waterfall and looked around. Where is this place? Why do I feel that there aren't many disciples here, and there are also the auras of spirit beasts? Xian Yu blinked and used its spiritual sense to silently investigate the auras of the mountain peak. At this time, it suddenly saw a female disciple in a white dress walking towards the peak of the mountain on the tree-lined path in front of it. It quickly flew over to the female disciple's side and asked in a sweet voice, "Sister, please wait. I would like to ask, where is this place?" The female disciple immediately stopped, and when she turned around and saw Xian Yu, her eyes widened and a look of joy appeared on her pretty face. Wow, what a cute little guy. This furry little thing can actually talk. It's too cute. The female disciple looked at Xian Yu in amazement and couldn't help but reach out to stroke its tail. Without a doubt, she had already been charmed by Xian Yu's cuteness, and wished she could hug Xian Yu and kiss him. Xian Yu stared at her with wide eyes and pretended to be cute as she asked, "Pretty sister, where is this? I'm lost." The female disciple regained her senses and quickly said with a smile, "Of course this is the Spirit Beast Garden. Little fellow, did you run out from the Spirit Beast Garden? How did you get lost?" Spirit Beast Garden. Xian Yu blinked and asked curiously, "Are there many spirit beasts there?" The female disciple nodded and said, "Of course. The Spirit Beast Garden is a place to raise spirit beasts. There must be many spirit beasts there. But those spirit beasts in the Spirit Beast Garden are not as smart and cute as you. You can even talk, really?" Xian Yu was both happy and curious. It quickly begged, "Pretty sister, can you bring me to the Spirit Beast Garden? I want to see those spirit beasts." The female disciple liked Xian Yu very much and couldn't bear to reject its request. She nodded and agreed. "All right, come with me." "Thank you, pretty sister," Xian Yu said sweetly and followed the female disciple to the peak of the mountain. Just as the two of them left, a figure appeared on the tree-lined path. This person was Bai Wuchen. When Xian Yu was flying in the sky and admiring the scenery, he noticed Xian Yu and followed it all the way here. When he saw Xian Yu following the female disciple to the peak of the mountain, he frowned and muttered, "That damned fox. Why is it going to the Spirit Beast Garden?" He frowned and thought for a moment. Then, he quickly followed the female disciple and quietly rushed to the peak of the mountain. 4 hours later, it was noon. Ji Tianqing temporarily ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. After a few days of bitter cultivation, he had successfully refined the 8th aperture and finally completed the first sword vein. Now, his strength had finally reached the 2nd stage of the mystic enlightening realm. After walking out of the room, he stretched his body in the courtyard. Coincidentally, he saw a servant disciple fetching water from the well in the corner of the courtyard. He casually asked about it. "Ah Mu, have you seen Xian Yu? Where did it go?" Ever since Ji Tianqing had moved into the Tianqing courtyard, Xian Yu had been wandering around the courtyard all day. It had already become familiar with the servant disciples and maidservants. The servant disciple, Ah Mu, quickly put down the water bucket and reported to Ji Tianqing with cupped fists, "Senior brother Ji, Xian Yu felt that the courtyard was not fun. It flew out this morning and hasn't returned yet." Ji Tianqing nodded and did not say anything. However, he was somewhat worried. With Xian Yu's temperament, I'm afraid it will cause some trouble by running around in the sect. However, it's smart and cunning. It shouldn't be at a disadvantage, right? After thinking for a moment, he turned around and returned to the study. He picked up a secret book on array formation and flipped through it while waiting for Qianyu to return. However, 2 hours passed. Qianyu still had not returned. The maidservant, Xiao Shuang, hurriedly walked to the door of the study and reported, "Senior Brother Ji, there's a deacon of the Spirit Beast Garden outside the door. He said he has something important to discuss with you." Ji Tianqing immediately put down the secret book and raised his eyebrows with a puzzled expression. "A deacon of the Spirit Beast Garden? Why is he looking for me?" Xiao Shuang hurriedly replied, "Xiao Shuang is not sure. However, looking at the deacon's expression, I'm afraid this matter is rather serious." Ji Tianqing frowned and walked out of the study. When he arrived at the door, he saw a middle-aged deacon in a black robe waiting with a grave expression. Seeing him come out, the middle-aged deacon opened his mouth and asked, "You are Ji Tianqing, right?" "I am Xiang Wu, the deacon of the Spirit Beast Garden." Ji Tianqing cupped his fists and bowed. He asked, "May I ask why Deacon Xiang is looking for me?" Xiang Wu frowned and said in a dignified tone, "Ji Tianqing, do you have a spirit beast pet? It's a little fox called Qianyu, right?" Ji Tianqing vaguely guessed something and nodded. "Yes. Deacon Xiang, are you looking for me because of Qianyu? Did it get into trouble?" Chapter 236. Hearing Xiang Wu's words, Ji Tianqing's brows twitched as a trace of surprise flashed across his eyes. "Deacon Xiang, that's impossible, right? My Qianyu is still young and weak. How could she kill a rank 3 spirit beast?" Ji Tianqing knew that a rank 3 spirit beast strength was equivalent to an expert at the 5th or 6th level of the profound comprehension realm. Although the Sky Pillar sect Spirit Beast Garden had dozens of spirit beasts. Most of the spirit beasts in the garden were rank 1 and rank 2 spirit beasts. Rank 3 spirit beasts were rare, and there were only a few of them. When he heard that Qianyu had killed a rank 3 spirit beast, his first reaction was disbelief. However, Xiang Wu nodded with a grave expression and said, "Ji Tianqing, this matter is absolutely true. Come with me." Ji Tianqing replied calmly, "That's fine too. I also want to see if there is any misunderstanding." Subsequently, he followed Xiang Wu and left the Tianqing courtyard for the Spirit Beast Garden. The Spirit Beast Garden was located at the back of the 9 peaks of the Sky Pillar sect. The two of them hurried for over an hour before arriving at the peak of Spirit Beast Peak. There were over a dozen palaces and courtyards on the peak, but most of the area was empty land with short shrubs and bushes. That area was protected by tall walls and arrays. It was the Spirit Beast Garden where spirit beasts were raised. Of course, there were a total of 3 beast gardens on Spirit Beast Peak. The 2 gardens halfway up the mountain were used to raise rank 1 and rank 2 low-grade spirit beasts. There were only 7 third-rank spirit beasts in the beast garden at the peak of the mountain. Xiang Wu first brought Ji Tianqing into the Spirit Beast Garden to check on the spirit beast that was killed. It was a quiet shadow leopard that was over 4 meters long. Its entire body was black and gray, and its muscles were filled with power. This was a genuine rank 3 spirit beast that could be used as a mount for an expert and could also participate in battles. Unfortunately, this quiet shadow leopard that had been raised in the Spirit Beast Garden for 5 years was now lying dead in the forest. There were no obvious wounds on its body, only a few claw marks on its head. However, its skull had been smashed into pieces. Blood, broken bones, and minced meat mixed together. It was a ghastly sight. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that this shadow leopard had been attacked by a spirit beast and killed with a single swipe of its paw. Xiang Wu looked at the dead quiet shadow leopard with a pained expression. He said in a low voice, "We have raised this quiet shadow leopard for 5 years. It is already very intelligent. Originally, this shadow leopard was going to be awarded to an inner court disciple with outstanding performance in the heaven-ranking competition next month. But now, sigh. Xiang Wu shook his head and sighed heavily. Ji Tianqing didn't say anything. He said expressionlessly, "Deacon Xiang, take me to see Qian Yu." Xiang Wu nodded and said in a deep voice, "This matter has alarmed Elder Wu of our hall. Your pet has been detained by him. Elder Wu is waiting for you in the main hall. I will take you there now." 15 minutes later, Xiang Wu took Ji Tianqing into the main hall of the Hall of Spirit Beasts. In the main hall, a skinny old man with gray hair and a beard was sitting at the head of the table. He was resting with his eyes closed, expressionless. He was Elder Wu of the Hall of Spirit Beasts. During the apprenticeship ceremony, he had given Ji Tianqing a congratulatory gift. On the wooden table next to Elder Wu, there was a black iron cage the size of a wash basin. The iron cage was engraved with patterns of an array. It was glowing with a colorful glow and emitting true origin energy. Qian Yu was curled up in the iron cage, looking drowsy. Xiang Wu took Ji Tianqing into the main hall and bowed to Elder Wu. "Greetings, Elder Wu. I have brought Ji Tianqing here." Only then did Elder Wu open his eyes and look at Ji Tianqing indifferently. Qian Yu was woken up by Xiang Wu's words. It raised its head and looked outside. Seeing Ji Tianqing, Qian Yu smiled as if a heavy burden had been lifted off its shoulders. Ji Tianqing stepped forward and cupped his fists to Elder Wu. "Greetings, Elder Wu. I am Ji Tianqing." Elder Wu nodded slightly and said unhurriedly, "Ji Tianqing, Deacon Xiang has already shown you the corpse of the shadow leopard, right?" Ji Tianqing answered honestly, "Yes, I have. But this cannot prove that it was my pet that killed the shadow leopard. There may be more to this." "More to this?" Elder Wu raised his eyebrows and said in a dignified tone, "Manager Xiang saw it with his own eyes and your pet has confessed. Do you still want to defend yourself?" Ji Tianqing didn't argue. He turned to Qian Yu and asked, "Qian Yu, did you really kill that shadow leopard?" Speaking of this, Qian Yu was angry. "Ji, you can't blame me for this. That little leopard suddenly went crazy and attacked me for no reason. I fought back. Who would have thought that the little leopard would be so weak even though it looked so powerful? I killed it with one slap of my paw." Ji Tianqing was overjoyed. He asked in disbelief, "You really killed the shadow leopard with one paw? That was a third-rank spiritual beast." Elder Wu's face turned darker when he saw that Su Ping didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, he was overjoyed. Xiang Wu stared at Ji Tianqing, speechless. He mumbled to himself, "How can this kid be so unruly? Your pet is in big trouble. Why are you so happy?" Qian Yu seemed to be afraid that Ji Tianqing would be angry. He quickly explained, "Ji, I'm innocent. I was just taking a stroll in the spirit beast garden. Who knew that the little leopard would suddenly go crazy and bite me? Also, it was too weak. I just fought back instinctively. I slapped it with my paw and it died. Ji, I really just slapped it. I didn't mean to kill it." Ji Tianqing was even more surprised when he heard Qian Yu's explanation. Qian Yu has only recovered 30% of his strength. He can kill a third-rank spiritual beast with just one paw. If he recovers 50% or 60% of his strength, won't he be able to deal with fourth-rank spiritual beasts of the origin core realm? Thinking of this, he was full of expectations. Seeing Qian Yu's anxious and aggrieved look, he quickly smiled and nodded. "Qian Yu, I believe you didn't do it on purpose. It's not your fault." Qian Yu immediately smiled and nodded. He said coquettishly, "Ji, I knew you were reliable." Elder Wu's face turned even darker. He said in a dignified voice, "Ji Tianqing, I summoned you here not to comfort your pet, but to solve this matter." Ji Tianqing nodded and said calmly, "Since that shadow leopard was killed by my pet, I have nothing to say. How should I solve this matter? Elder Wu, please tell me. Elder Wu was very dissatisfied with his attitude. He shouted in a dignified voice, how should I solve it? Of course, I will punish you according to the sect rules. Can you give me back a shadow leopard? Chapter 237. Hearing Ji Tianqing's words, Elder Wu was startled. He frowned and stared at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression. He asked, Ji Tianqing, is this true? Ji Tianqing nodded without hesitation. Of course it is true. If Elder Wu trusts me, I will personally present you with a third-rank spirit beast within 5 days. Elder Wu was silent as he weighed the pros and cons. If he were to punish Ji Tianqing according to the sect rules, not only would it not help, but it would also cause this sect master's disciple to harbor resentment. At this point, this was the only way to recoup the losses. Thus, Elder Wu nodded and said in a serious tone, Ji Tianqing, you are the sect master's personal disciple. Of course, I trust you. I'll give you 5 days. I'm waiting for you to accompany me with a third-rank spirit beast. During this time, your pet Qian Yu will be detained in my spirit beast hall. If you can't compensate me after 5 days, then don't blame me for being merciless and punishing you according to the sect rules. Ji Tianqing nodded without changing his expression. Thank you, Elder Wu. Then it's a deal. Elder Wu nodded slightly and said in a calm tone, if you want to capture spirit beasts, you can go to Boundless Mountain, which is 200 miles southeast of our sect. It is a place with spirit veins. Spirit beasts often appear in Boundless Mountain. Most of the spirit beasts raised in our hall are captured from there. Ji Tianqing silently remembered his words and cupped his fists. Thank you, Elder Wu, for your advice. This matter was settled. He comforted Qian Yu and asked it to wait patiently in the spirit beast hall. Qian Yu nodded in agreement and reminded him to be careful. After that, Ji Tianqing bowed to Elder Wu and left the spirit beast hall. Not long after he left, a white-robed youth walked out from a corner outside the spirit beast hall. This person was Bai Wuchen. He glanced at the main hall of the spirit beast hall and then looked in the direction where Ji Tianqing left. The corner of his mouth curled into a mocking sneer. Ji Tianqing, oh Ji Tianqing, with just your strength, you dare to go to Boundless Mountain to capture spirit beasts. Humph. At that time, if you don't return and die miserably in Boundless Mountain, that would be great news to everyone's satisfaction. I secretly used a flying needle to attack the quiet shadow leopard, causing it to go crazy and attack the fox. Unfortunately, the smelly fox is not weak, it was actually not killed by the quiet shadow leopard. After muttering a few words, Bai Wuchen turned around and quickly left the spirit beast peak. At the same time, Ji Tianqing returned to the Tianqing courtyard. He summoned the maidservant and 2 odd-job workers. With a solemn expression, he said, I need to go out for a trip. It will take about 3 to 5 days. For the next few days, you will stay in Tianqing courtyard and do not receive anyone. If anyone comes looking for me, tell them to come back in 5 days. After giving the order, he left the towering sky peak and hurried to Boundless Mountain in the southeast. On the Red Cloud Peak, in a certain palace, Chu Tiansheng was dealing with sect affairs in his study. At this time, a middle-aged guard wearing a black robe quickly walked to the door of the study and respectfully reported, Sect Master, something has happened to Ji Tianqing. Chu Tiansheng put down the file in his hand, frowned, and asked in a deep voice, what happened? The middle-aged guard walked into the study and reported to Chu Tiansheng in a low voice, not long ago, Deacon Xiang Wu of the Spirit Beast Hall went to find Ji Tianqing. After listening to the middle-aged guard's report, Chu Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. Then, he nodded slightly and said, since his pet killed a spirit beast in the Spirit Beast Garden, Elder Wu dealt with it in accordance with the sect rules. He did not deliberately make things difficult for him. He wants to go to Boundless Mountain to capture spirit beasts and compensate the Spirit Beast Garden. It is reasonable. Let him go. It is true that it is risky for him to go to Boundless Mountain to capture spirit beasts given his strength. But he is my disciple. If he can't even solve this problem, how can he convince the others in the future? You don't have to protect him in secret. Let him deal with it himself. The middle-aged guard hesitated for a moment and asked in a low voice, Sect Master, I am worried that if Ji Tianqing goes to Boundless Mountain, will that young master in the mountain be alerted? Chu Tianqing was silent for a moment. Then, he shook his head and said, there is a protective formation in the mountain. He should be fine. I understand. The middle-aged guard cupped his hands and left the study. Ji Tian used shadowless steps Qin Gong and used his true essence to run wildly in the mountains. He was so fast that he was like a gust of wind, crossing mountains and ridges as he hurried to Boundless Mountain. While he was hurrying, he was secretly analyzing the situation. Although Qianyue is a little mischievous, it is not to the extent of deliberately causing trouble. It is also impossible for it to kill the spirit beasts in the spirit beast garden for no reason. Previously, it said that when it was strolling in the spirit beast garden, it was attacked by a crazy shadow leopard. It subconsciously counterattacked and killed the shadow leopard. The spirit beasts in the spirit beast garden have been domesticated by the spirit beast hall for many years. They are very intelligent and will not go crazy for no reason. There might be something fishy about this matter. After I go to Boundless Mountain to capture spirit beasts and compensate the spirit beast hall, I will definitely get to the bottom of this matter. About 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing crossed 200 miles of mountains and finally arrived at Boundless Mountain. It was almost evening, and the sun was about to set. He stood at the foot of Boundless Mountain and looked up at Boundless Mountain that was shrouded in the afterglow of the setting sun. His eyes flashed with a hint of seriousness. Boundless Mountain was the closest spirit vein treasure land to the Sky Pillar sect. This mountain range was dozens of miles in radius. The mountain was steep and precipitous, and the trees on the mountain were lush, containing dense heaven and earth spirit chi. There was a winding river at the foot of the mountain. The river water was so clear that one could see the bottom. Schools of fish could clearly be seen swimming slowly at the bottom of the river. Not far away, there were 3 yellow-brown golden deer and a few white birds drinking water by the river. Seeing that someone had arrived, the 3 golden deer hurriedly left the river. The white birds were not afraid of people. After drinking the water, they strolled in the bushes by the river as if they were hunting insects for food. This Boundless Mountain is rich in spirit chi and lush with vegetation. It is indeed a spirit vein treasure land. Not only are there intelligent spirit beasts, but there are also many demon beasts and ordinary wild beasts entrenched in the mountain. I hope my luck is good enough to encounter the spirit beasts that appear here. Ji Tianqing stared at Boundless Mountain for a moment before walking into the mountain. Once he entered the dense forest, the afterglow of the setting sun was blocked by the trees. The light in the forest was dim, and the ground was damp, faintly emitting the smell of rotten vegetation. Ji Tianqing shuttled through the forest with light steps. He tried his best not to make any noise as he quickly rushed into the depths of Boundless Mountain. While shuttling through the forest, his sharp eyes searched the surroundings for various beasts that were hiding in the forest. 2 hours later, the sun finally set. The forest became dark and gloomy, and the roars of beasts rose and fell one after another from all directions. Chapter 238. Night had come. Ji Tianqing had reached the halfway point of Boundless Mountain and was traversing through the dense forest. The roars of beasts could be heard all around him, and the rustling of leaves could be heard from the forest. He knew that the beasts in the mountain had begun to hunt for food. Boundless Mountain at night was a paradise for all kinds of beasts, demon beasts, and spirit beasts, but it was a dangerous forbidden zone for humans. Ji Tianqing traversed through the forest. Not only did he have to be on guard against the attacks of beasts and demon beasts, he also had to be on guard against the poisonous snakes and insects hidden in the bushes and trees. He remembered a few months ago when he had not yet recovered to the true energy realm and was searching for the red star flower in Taiyi mountain range. At that time, he was only in the body refining realm, but he was attacked by many demon beasts in Taiyi mountain range and almost lost his life several times. Now that a few months had passed, he once again ventured into the mountain range where demon beasts ran rampant, but he was not as scared as before. With his current strength, he could ignore low-level and mid-level demon beasts. Only high-level demon beasts could pose a threat to him. Suddenly, in the forest not far ahead, there was a deep roar of a beast. Ji Tianqing's gaze pierced through the darkness of the night. He could vaguely see a pair of green eyes 100 steps away from him. Those green eyes were staring at him, revealing a cruel and bloodthirsty chill. I met a dozen demon beasts on my way up the mountain, but they all retreated. I didn't expect this demon beast to target me. Ji Tianqing sneered in his heart and silently drew out the black dragon sword. After a while, the demon beast in the forest finally could not hold back its bloodthirsty desire. It roared in a deep voice and rushed over as fast as the wind. When it was close enough, Ji Tianqing could see clearly that it was a wind patrol wolf. The wind patrol wolf was one of the stronger mid-level demon beasts. It was extremely fast, cruel, and cunning, and usually acted alone. Its strength was equivalent to a 5th or 6th level true energy realm martial artist. Swoosh! Under the cover of the night, the wind scout wolf rushed to within 10 steps of Ji Tianqing and pounced at him. Its huge body, which was 4 meters long, carried a strong pressure and strong wind as it pounced down from above Ji Tianqing's head. Ji Tianqing did not dodge. His eyes were fixed on the incoming wind wolf, and he instantly pulled out his black dragon sword. Clang! A crisp sound of a sword rang out. The black dragon sword flashed with a dazzling cold light, carrying an incomparably violent power as it slashed towards the wind wolf. When the wind wolf sensed the terrifying power and aura of the black dragon sword, its eyes suddenly became panicked. However, it was in midair, and it was impossible to avoid it. Boom! With a muffled sound, the 3-meter-long golden sword light split the wind wolf into 2 halves. It didn't even have the time to let out a scream before its head was separated from its body and fell to the ground, sprinkling a puddle of dark red blood. Ji Tianqing put away the black dragon sword and left with an expressionless face. With his strength, a mid-rank demonic beast would basically be killed in one strike. He did not continue on his way, and stopped 100 steps away from the forest. With a leap, he jumped onto a towering tree and sat on the branch, waiting quietly. 100 steps away from him, the wind scout wolf's corpse was lying in the grass. Blood was constantly flowing out, emitting a thick smell of blood. The thick smell of blood would attract many demonic beasts and spirit beasts. Ji Tianqing had to wait for the spirit beasts to appear. Time passed by quietly. In the quiet forest, the rustling of footsteps and the roars of beasts rose and fell. Soon, a few demonic beasts smelled the smell of blood and quietly rushed to the wind scout wolf's corpse. They were 3 mid-rank red flame tigers. They looked around for a moment, and after confirming that there was no danger nearby, they quickly devoured the wind scout wolf's corpse. In just a short time, the wind scout wolf's corpse was completely eaten, and the 3 red flame tigers quickly left. Although, there were still a few demonic beasts that rushed over. But these demonic beasts acted alone. When they saw the 3 red flame tigers, they hid in the dark and did not dare to show their faces, or quietly retreated. Ji Tianqing hid on the branch of a towering tree and witnessed the whole process. He could not help but frown, somewhat disappointed. These demonic beasts devoured the corpse too quickly, and the other demonic beasts were also very cautious, hiding in the dark and would not easily show themselves. It seems that my idea of using demonic beasts' corpses to attract the target will not work. I have to think of another way. He frowned and thought for a moment, then took out the psychic astrolabe from his interspatial ring. The psychic astrolabe was the Ji family's ancestral treasure, a top-grade profound artifact. It could be said to be priceless and incomparably precious. When Ji Changkong gave this astrolabe to him, he said that this astrolabe could be used to detect the aura of spirit veins, rare treasures, and spirit objects. Therefore, Ji Tianqing had been carrying the psychic astrolabe with him. Since he obtained the red star flower, this psychic astrolabe had not been used. Now, he wanted to use the psychic astrolabe again to detect the aura of spirit beasts. Ji Tianqing jumped down from the treetop, walked in the dark forest, and continued to rush into the depths of Boundless Mountain. He held the psychic astrolabe in his left hand, and pressed his right palm on the astrolabe, injecting true essence into it to activate the array on the astrolabe. When he was looking for the red star flower in the past, he was only in the body refining realm, and did not understand the mystery of the psychic astrolabe at all, so he could not exert much of its effect and power. Now, it was different. With his strength and array attainments, he could exert 60 to 70% of the psychic astrolabe's effect. Ji Tianqing traversed through the night without making a sound, just like a phantom. The black dragon sword also turned into a small black dragon, following him closely, vigilantly observing the surroundings. Along the way, many demonic beasts found Ji Tianqing's trace and were eager to attack. However, those demonic beasts were basically low-rank and middle-rank demonic beasts. After they sensed the aura of the small black dragon, they were frightened and did not dare to show up. About 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing walked 30 miles through the forest and finally came to the depths of Boundless Mountain. In the process, although he encountered dozens of demonic beasts, none of them dared to take the initiative to attack him. Suddenly, the psychic astrolabe reacted and lit up with a pale silver brilliance. I finally detected the aura of spirit beasts. Ji Tianqing's eyes showed a touch of joy, and he quickly carefully checked the lines and patterns on the psychic astrolabe. After a moment of observation, he identified the direction and quickly rushed to the left. Under the guidance of the psychic astrolabe, he found a beast cave in the jungle on the top of the mountain. When he got into the beast cave, he could clearly sense the spiritual chi fluctuations coming from the depths of the beast cave without the guidance of the psychic astrolabe. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.